Chapter 1934, The She-Emperor. 1. Jian Chen, who is this little whore? How'd you gain her attention? Fairy Hao Yu stared at Yaxi Lian as she spoke on the floating gardens above the platforms. She's the commander of the 7th Army from the Empyrean demon cult. Afterwards, Jian Chen told her the rough details of the war between the divine kingdom of Pingtian and the Empyrean demon cult. However, he hid the fact that a god king from the Daoist sect of Calm Clouds had ambushed him. I never thought she'd be a commander of the 9 armies of the Empyrean demon cult. This time, the Empyrean demon cult really has made some extremely big moves. They've split their 9 armies into 3 to attack the southern, northern, and western regions. It's such a big move that just the 3 vice leaders in the branch of the Cloud Plane definitely would not have been behind it. That is because if they don't control it well, the outcome will be extremely severe. Not a single one of the 3 vice leaders can afford to take the blame. This is probably related to the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult, Tian Shuang said sternly. Even someone as powerful as her became serious when the Empyrean demon cult was mentioned. Afterwards, Tian Shuang looked at Fairy Hao Yu and said sternly, "Sister Hao Yu, listen to me. It's best if you don't take part in the matters regarding the Empyrean demon cult." Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Tian Shuang after hearing that. She said, "Sister Tian Shuang, you should understand me. Do you think I'm a person who fears death? When I want to do something, no one can stop me. Not even my father." With that, Fairy Hao Yu looked at Jian Chen once again. She said, "Jian Chen, the wounds that were on your body possess traces of laws on the level of god kings, but it doesn't seem like they came from the little whore. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but with your current strength, that little whore can finish you off without the slightest effort, and you wouldn't be able to put up a fight at all. Yet, the wounds on you clearly came from a battle against a god king. Were there other god kings from the Empyrean demon cult who fought against you?" A vicious light flickered through Fairy Hao Yu's eyes, but no one sensed it. Jian Chen shook his head and said with a rather sunken face, "It's not the Empyrean demon cult, but someone from my own side. However, I will personally settle this matter." Fairy Hao Yu did not delve into the matter, seeing how Jian Chen was unwilling to elaborate. She reached out with her hand and Yaxi Lian, who was trapped in mid-air, immediately flew before her. She stared at Fairy Hao Yu in both humiliation and anger. With Yaxi Lian's status in the Empyrean demon cult, even the other 8 commanders had to treat her politely, yet she had been humiliated like this today. Even though she was a 9-tailed heavenly fox and naturally skilled in charm, she was not as sexual as other people described her to be. As a matter of fact, she had never shown herself to a single man before Jian Chen for cultivation. Even when she absorbed the vitality of some men, she would just plant her head against theirs. Only Jian Chen had been an exception due to the special characteristics of the energy within him. It was extremely powerful and filled with a power of destruction, so Yaxi Lian did not dare to devour it so easily. She could not find any other method, so she decided to absorb it through the method of balancing yin and yang. That was why she had revealed herself before Jian Chen. She wanted to control Jian Chen's mind using her natural charm as a 9-tailed heavenly fox so that she could get him to cooperate. As a result, although Yaxi Lian was a 9-tailed heavenly fox, she had always maintained her purity and was very proud. Yet now, Fairy Hao Yu had actually dangled her naked self in the middle of the air in public, allowing countless people to look and admire her body. It was impossible for her to endure something like that since she had never shown herself off to a man before Jian Chen. Everything that had happened today would definitely remain as a permanent stain to her name. However, Hao Yu was also a terrifying primordial realm expert, so even though she felt absolutely furious, she did not dare to say anything. She only stared at Fairy Hao Yu furiously. However, she had already buried this hatred deep within her heart. Fairy Hao Yu directly ignored Yaxi Lian's anger. She said to Jian Chen, "How do you want this little whore to die?" "Sister Hao Yu," Tian Shuang hesitated as she became slightly worried. She really did not wish for Fairy Haoyu to get involved with the grievances of the Empyrean demon cult. The Empyrean demon cult was simply too powerful. A single branch on the cloud plane had led to such a bloody storm. Even they, the empires, did not dare to wipe them out directly. They could only block them and protect their own territory. Even the organizations that stood at the apex of the cloud plane did not dare to do anything to the Empyrean demon cult. Jian Chen glanced at Tian Shuang and sank into his thoughts. He said after a while, Fairy Haoyu, I want to keep her alive for now. The Empyrean demon cult is currently waging war against the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Keeping a commander as a hostage might be extremely useful to the situation. Fairy Haoyu glanced at Jian Chen deeply and smiled slightly. All right then. Since you want to keep this little whore alive, I'll spare her. I've already sealed up her cultivation, so she can't use her strength as a god king at all. As a result, you don't need to worry about any threats from her. You can leave her by your side so that she can serve you in the next few days. You can enjoy this little bitch. Jian Chen let out a breath of relief when he heard Fairy Haoyu's words. In reality, he did not wish to see Fairy Haoyu fall out with the Empyrean demon cult because of him, as it would basically mean he doomed her. However, Fairy Haoyu's words towards the end made Jian Chen speechless. He discovered that after Fairy Haoyu had recovered her strength, she seemed to develop a hobby of toying around with people, making her seem completely different from her cold and stern past self. Tian Shuang also stared at Fairy Haoyu strangely. If it were not for the fact that she had heard it herself, she would not believe her sister Haoyu could actually say something like that. Jian Chen is actually able to converse with the primordial realm expert so casually. What is his background? The emperor stood to one side as he constantly guessed at Jian Chen's identity. He had already thought through all the peak organizations he knew on the cloud plane. Fairy Haoyu's previous words had been deeply embedded in his head. If roping in Jian Chen could really allow the Xiandao Empire to rise up, then he really would be interested in betrothing his two daughters to Jian Chen. Suddenly, the emperor's face changed. He took out a jade talisman from his space ring with a flip of his hand and immediately extended the senses of his soul into it. Afterwards, a sliver of helplessness appeared on his face. Ancestor, please, the emperor passed the talisman to Tian Shuang. Tian Shuang also extended the senses of her soul into the jade talisman after accepting it. She sighed gently after learning its contents. Who knows what this She-Emperor is doing now? Do what he asked for. We can't disobey him and disrespect him over something as small as this. Sister Tian Shuang, what is wrong? Fairy Haoyu asked curiously. It's a message from the She-Emperor of the She-Empire. The She-Emperor wants all the empires in the northern region to close off their regional teleportation formations. Sigh, ever since he became emperor, who knows how many times this has happened already. But every time he asks for us to close the teleportation formations, there will be deaths of expert from the imperial family, personally slain by the She-Emperor. And there are plenty of primordial realm experts among them. Tian Shuang sighed gently. When she mentioned the She-Emperor, angst appeared in her eyes. What? This She-Emperor will even kill primordial realm experts of the imperial family? Fairy Haoyu was slightly stunned. Exactly. Who knows what the She-Emperor is trying to do? Ever since he ascended to the position of emperor, the imperial family of the She-Empire hasn't gotten any peace. Not only has the She-Emperor killed a lot of infinite primes, but he has even killed most of the other princes. There are only 1 or 2 of them left from over a dozen in the past. They all fear the She-Emperor dearly, said Tian Shuang. Fairy Haoyu remained silent for quite some time after hearing that. She felt that the She-Emperor had simply gone mad. He had even killed so many infinite primes that belonged to his own family. All of these experts would be worshipped ancestors wherever they went. Jian Chen also felt shocked. Infinite primes were existences that he could only look up to. They were peak experts. Once a divine kingdom possessed an infinite prime, they would immediately be elevated to the status of empire. However, from Tian Shuang's words, infinite primes did not seem to be that valuable at all since the Shi Emperor had killed a lot of them just by himself. This was simply too shocking. At this moment, terrifying shockwaves of energy swept across the sky above the imperial capital. A transparent, blue barrier had suddenly appeared in the sky. The barrier seemed thin, but the energy it contained was so terrifying that it shocked even Jian Chen. Tian Shuang stared at the energy barrier, and she became very stern. She said, "That's the heavenly disorder array at the capital. I never thought the Shi Emperor would actually activate this formation. The Shi Empire has sealed off the entire northern region now. No one can leave, and even teleportation formations are rendered useless, including the Disk of Heavenly Ways. Looks like the Shi Emperor is moving against someone important." At this moment, the power of laws in the surroundings suddenly became chaotic. Deafening booms rang out from outer space, where the terrifying shockwaves of energy swept out like storms. It caused space to twist and shatter, creating great cracks. Jian Chen gazed over. In the distant outer space, he could vaguely see two bodies of light completely condensed from laws constantly collided with each other. Each collision would erupt with devastating might. It was truly startling. "That's a battle between two chaotic primes." Fairy Haoyu also stared at the sky as she said nonchalantly. "One of them is the Shi Emperor, while the other one is an ancestral emperor of the Shi Empire, who is also the current Shi Emperor's father." Tian Shuang recognized the two of them with a single glance. She sighed gently. Every time the Shi Emperor wants to move against someone important, the ancestral emperor would come to stop him. Who knows how many times the two of them have fought since he became the current Shi Emperor. Chapter 1935, The Shi Emperor, 2. Then why is the Shi Emperor moving against his own people, even going as far as fighting the ancestral emperor? Moreover, he's killing infinite primes. Can he really go as far as killing them? Isn't he worried that the Shi Empire will become greatly weakened? Fairy Haoyu asked out of curiosity. Tian Shuang sighed gently. It's not just greatly weakening. The Shi Emperor has already fractured the current Shi Empire. He has killed many of the infinite primes in the imperial family. They'll probably struggle to recover without a few 100,000 years. But the Shi Emperor sure is vicious. Not only are there people who had joined the Shi Empire among the infinite primes he killed, but there are also older family members and his own brothers and sisters. Without a single exception, all of them are dead. However, this Shi Emperor is extremely impressive. Soon after he became emperor, he became a chaotic prime. As a result, even though the empire has lost many infinite primes, the Shi Empire's overall strength hasn't decreased at all with the Shi Emperor's breakthrough. Tian Shuang hesitated after reaching there before continuing. "I think the reason why the Shi Emperor is acting like a madman, turning on his own primordial realm experts, is because of what happened over 2,000 years ago when the previous Shi Emperor abdicated. He was still a prince of the empire back then." "Oh? Let's hear about it." Fairy Haoyu stared at the battle in outer space closely as she felt very much curious. Jian Chen also listened carefully. He also felt extremely curious about the reason why the Shi Emperor acted like a madman and killed so many of his own infinite primes, even going as far as fighting his father. Infinite primes were revered basically wherever they went. Even in ancient empires, they were existences akin to ancestors. The Shi Emperor was actually even willing to kill people like that. Even the trapped Yaxi Lian seemed to forget the fact that she had been reduced to a prisoner. The battle in outer space had also garnered her attention while she had eavesdropped on everything that Tian Shuang had revealed. After a moment of silence, Tian Shuang said, "In the past, when the current Shi Emperor was still a prince, he possessed extraordinary talent. He shone the brightest among all the princes of the Shi Empire, overshadowing them all. Even the old emperor paid special attention to him. Naturally, the Shi Emperor was the person who was the most likely to succeed as emperor. In any empire, there is always a fierce struggle amongst the princes to become emperor. The glory of the Shi Emperor naturally attracted the envy of the other princes. He became the greatest obstacle to many of the princes who wanted to become emperor. As a result, all the princes in the Shi Empire treated him as a thorn in their side. They all wanted to eliminate him. However, in all those years, the Shi Emperor never focused on the position of emperor. He thought of it as nothing, showing no intention to take part in the struggle for it. As a result, the princes never moved against the Shi Emperor. Several thousand years ago, the old emperor became an chaotic prime and was about to abdicate. However, he wanted the current Shi Emperor to take up the position, which naturally resulted in the displeasure of all the princes who wanted to become emperor. As a result, the princes all moved against him secretly to eliminate him. Tian Shuang's expression changed slightly when she reached this point. As she stared at the Shi Emperor, who fought against the ancestral emperor in outer space, a sliver of sympathy and understanding appeared in her eyes. She continued, "The matter that created the greatest stir was when the Shi Emperor and his wife visited his wife's home, and they faced the pursuit of the many princes. The current Shi Emperor had never shown any interest in the position of emperor, so he never bothered to rope in any authoritative members of the upper echelon, while the other princes had all been raising their own factions. They were either supported by senior members of the imperial family or infinite prime subjects. As a result, when they hunted down the Shi Emperor, the people who supported them obviously took part as well. Some of the princes had even asked people who were not a part of the imperial family to hunt him down. At that time, over a dozen infinite primes tried to hunt down the Shi Emperor and his wife, pushing them towards desperation. They almost lost their lives many times, and even their path back to the Shi Empire had been blocked, so there was no hopes of them returning. As a result, the two of them could only flee all over the cloud plain. If it were not for the fact that they were both infinite primes, they probably would not be alive anymore. The hunt and pursuit lasted for many years. With the Shi Emperor's talent, his strength constantly increased while he was being hunted down. When he reached the 9th heavenly layer of infinite prime, he finally returned. After returning, the Shi Emperor, who had never shown any interest in the position of emperor, suddenly changed his mind. He began taking part in the struggle for emperor. With the old emperor's favor and his personal talent, it was certain for him to become the new emperor. He completely overwhelmed the other princes and became the new Shi Emperor. However, something had probably stimulated the Shi Emperor when he was being hunted down. As soon as he ascended, he was no longer behaved as refined and cultured as in the past. He became extremely forceful, moving against the people who had hunted him down in the past. He killed an infinite prime subject and 2 princes on the day he ascended, but clearly, he was not satisfied. When he wanted to kill a second subject, the ancestral emperor stopped him. At the same time, quite a few subjects and senior members of the imperial family joined forces, using more than half of the empire's power to fend him off. Even a few of the peak sects in the Shi Empire took part, placing the Shi Emperor back under control. However, none of them had imagined that soon after he became emperor, he would break through again and become a chaotic prime. He became someone equivalent to the ancestral emperors of the Shi Empire. With that, there was no one left in the Shi Empire that dared to disobey him. The Shi Emperor also completely ran amok after that, eliminating large groups of enemies that had hunted him down in the past. It did not matter whether they were peak infinite primes, senior members of the empire, or princes. If they had taken part in the pursuit against the Shi Emperor and his wife, the Shi Emperor would execute them mercilessly. There had even been 2 9th heavenly layer infinite prime subjects that were personally slain by the Shi Emperor. A sliver of amazement appeared in Tian Shuang's eyes when she reached their 9th heavenly layer infinite primes, only a step away from becoming chaotic primes. The Shi Emperor has even killed people like that without any hesitation. He's willing to go as far as that, and he is even willing to fight against his father. Fairy Hao Yu also became surprised, has the She-Emperor gone insane? Even if those people have hunted him down in the past, there's no need to go as far as killing them. Just a slight punishment is enough. After all, they're ninth heavenly layer infinite primes. Even in our moon god hall, we would nurture them like treasured people. Of course, that's only if they don't commit any heinous crimes. Yeah. In the northern region, many people believe that the She-Emperor has lost his mind, or he encountered a stimulation that's too great. Otherwise, why would he change so much and become so vicious and vengeful? He's completely different from before, said Tian Shuang. Chapter 1936. Trapped in the northern region, princes turning on one another during the struggle for the position of emperor is commonplace, but once a prince becomes an emperor, they'll always try to look at the bigger picture in an attempt to maintain the strength of the empire. They'll let go of some past grievances, dish out some light punishments, or exile them to some remote lands of the empire. However, it sure is the first time for me to see something like the She-Emperor hunting down every single one of them, unwilling to let any of them go, said Fairy Hao Yu. Whatever. That's the matters of the She-Empire. It has got nothing to do with our Xiandao Empire. Fortunately, we turned down the princes who had come to our Xiandao Empire to ask us to take part in the hunt. Otherwise, the She-Emperor would never let us go, Tian Shuang said with some lingering fear. She felt extremely fortunate. Even she feared the current She-Emperor somewhat. Enough. Shi Ziyun, when are you going to stop this madness? Are you only going to be satisfied if you watch the She-Empire crumble in your hands? At this moment, a thunderous voice boomed out in the sky. The old voice possessed an irrefutable sense of dignity. This was the furious bellows of the ancestral emperor of the She-Empire. In the sky, the She-Emperor continued to fight his father, the ancestral emperor. The power of laws from the primordial realm formed chains, and whenever they collided, they would erupt with devastating might, causing the space there to crack. Father, I've sworn in the past that I will reduce anyone who took part, regardless of who they are, to dust. I will not spare any of them, and I will not show any mercy. Father, if you want to obstruct my revenge, I'll sever our relationship today and leave the She-Empire. I'll have nothing to do with the She-Empire from today onwards. And I will still kill those people. If the She-Empire tries to stop me, I will become enemies with the She-Empire. Another dignified voice boomed out, ringing through outer space with the powerful laws of the primordial realm. This was the She-Emperor's voice. It was dignified and filled with power. The voice also contained furious resentment and an extremely sturdy resolve. Why, you? Ziyun, how can you say something like that? Do you want to be the death of your father? Your brothers, those senior members, and those subjects, you've already executed so many of them. Are you still unwilling to stop? Do you really want to destroy this empire? The ancestral emperor said in great distress. Karma and the past will be resolved today. Wasn't this all caused by how you just abdicated and stopped caring? If you stood forward and stopped this in the past, why would all this happen today? Father, it doesn't matter what you say now, the She-Emperor said coldly. He was extremely determined. Below, Tian Shuang became stunned as she stood on the floating gardens. She said in shock, just how great is this grievance that's enough for the She-Emperor to even leave the She-Empire just so he can kill all his enemies? What happened when he was being hunted down back then to make him become so mad? Finally, the battle between the She-Emperor and the ancestral emperor came to an end after several hours, leaving the matter unsettled. They were father and son. As a result, although their battle seemed intense, it was nothing of that sort. It was naturally impossible for them to harm each other. The battle between chaotic primes in outer space came to an end, but Jian Chen continued to stare up. He was unable to calm down even after quite a while. The tremendous power of laws that had been invoked during the battle between the two chaotic primes interwove and radiated with devastating might. It had created a deep impression in Jian Chen's heart. Jian Chen had never witnessed such a shocking battle. Only after seeing the battle between two chaotic primes did he truly understand devastating. That was truly worthy of being labeled as devastating. Space had ripped several times because of their battle. If it were not for the fact that they were far enough away from the cloud plain, Jian Chen even suspected the northern region would crack from their battle. Jian Chen finally returned to his senses after who knows how long. He looked around and discovered that Fairy Hao Yu and Tian Shuang had already sat down, eating their spiritual fruits leisurely. The various changes in the situation permanently ended the competition on the several dozen platforms below. The host for the competition spoke to the Divine King, then announced that the competition would continue some other day. Jian Chen glanced past Yaxi Lian subconsciously and immediately thought of something. His face changed all of a sudden, and he looked at Fairy Hao Yu. Fairy Hao Yu, the Shi Emperor's formation has sealed up the northern region and all the teleportation formations are down as well. Doesn't that mean that I can't return to the southern region anymore? Jian Chen seemed to understand that he was no longer in the southern region by now. Instead, he was in the distant northern region. If the southern region was the Blood Sun Empire's world, then the northern region was the Shi Empire's world. Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Jian Chen and said, "That's right. You can't go back right now. Unless you have a formations master whose skill surpasses the formation, it's very difficult to breach the seal. Even a teleportation god artifact like the Disk of Heavenly Ways is useless." Jian Chen's face immediately became ugly when he heard that. He was panic-stricken. Sacred Feather, Houston, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu were still in the war on the divine kingdom of Pingtian. With their strength, accidents could happen at any time on a battlefield where even overgods would struggle to protect themselves. Back then, even a god king from the Daoist sect of Calm Clouds had tried to ambush and kill him. If he was not there, probably no one would look after them from the divine kingdom side. Although he was known as a supreme overgod who could make it onto the overgod's plaque, Jian Chen could already tell that no one would give him any special treatment if he did not stand on their side. They might even be looking forward to any accidents that befall on him. This was because none of them wished to see the divine kingdom of Pingtian truly rise up, as it would get in the way of their own interests and shift their status. Although the divine kingdom of Pingtian possessed a primordial realm expert, so they did not dare to move against Jian Chen openly, they could easily just ignore any pleas for help. They could even make horrible situations worse. Is there any other way to return to the southern region quickly? Jian Chen persisted. He was very worried. He really could not stop worrying about Sacred Feather, Houston, and the others when he was not personally there. Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Jian Chen and ate her fruit casually. She scoffed, "Even the people on your side turned against you, and they even sent a god king. If I had not made it in time, you probably would have been reduced to a shriveled corpse by this little whore. You can't even protect yourself, yet you're still in a hurry to go back, to go die. I will settle this debt myself. However, I have many friends on the battlefield. The White Tiger, Houston, Senior Rui Jin, and so on are all there. If something happens to them," Jian Chen paused as he felt frantic inside. Fairy Hao Yu was surprised. She knew how Jian Chen was related to these people. As such, after hesitating for a while, she replied seriously, "I don't have any method to take you to the southern region while the northern region has been sealed up by the Shi Emperor. However, you can ask Sister Tian Shuang. As an ancient empire, the Xiandao Empire naturally has regional teleportation formations. Sister Hao Yu, please don't make things difficult for me." Sealing off the teleportation formation was the Shi Emperor's personal request. There are barely any people who dare to not respect the Shi Emperor. Moreover, you too have seen the forcefulness and viciousness of the Shi Emperor, Tian Shuang said painfully. She felt very troubled. Chapter 1937, The God's Fallen Clan. Senior Tian Shuang, do you know any other way to leave the northern region? Is there no place that the Shi Emperor has missed when he sealed up the region? Jian Chen asked. He had no idea how long the seal over the northern region would last. He really did not want to stay here for too long, as he was afraid that something would happen to Sacred Feather and the others. It's not exactly impossible. Tian Shuang sank into her thoughts, and she became somewhat serious. She said, the Shi Emperor has indeed sealed off the northern region, but there are a few special places that are unaffected. The God's Fallen Clan is one of them. The God's Fallen Clan? Fairy Haoyu murmured softly as she became doubtful. She had stayed in the northern region for some time, so she basically understood all the organizations in the northern region. However, this was the first time she had heard of the God's Fallen Clan. The expression of the emperor who stood to one side changed when he heard Tian Shuang mention the God's Fallen Clan. Deep angst and dread appeared in his eyes. The God's Fallen Clan was an existence their Xiandao Empire could only look up to. They were so great that they stood at the very apex of the cloud plain. Even just learning the name of the clan required a certain amount of strength. Even the emperor had only learnt about it after ascending. Tian Shuang explained, the God's Fallen Clan possesses an extremely great status in the northern region. They're one of the organizations that stand at the very peak of the cloud plain. Only they can help you now. Jian Chen's heart sank with that. He was depressed. Since the God's Fallen Clan was so powerful, there was no reason for them to help him with his current status. Suddenly, Jian Chen thought of an idea. A figure he had not seen in quite a while suddenly appeared in his head. He immediately looked at Tian Shuang with shining eyes and said, Senior Tian Shuang, do you know about the Tong family? The Tong family? You actually know about the Tong family? Tian Shuang stared at Jian Chen in surprise. She felt taken aback. Of course I know about the Tong family, but they're not in the northern region. They're in the central region. Sister Tian Shuang, tell me the location of the God's Fallen Clan, Fairy Haoyu said at this moment. Sister Haoyu, surely you aren't going to pay a personal visit to the God's Fallen Clan for him? Tian Shuang stared at Haoyu in shock. She discovered that her sister Haoyu treated Jian Chen like he was extremely special. Fairy Haoyu had been by Jian Chen's side along the way. She understood just how important Sacred Feather, Houston, and the others were to Jian Chen. As a result, Tian Shuang felt powerless under Fairy Haoyu's insistence. She could only tell her the God's Fallen Clan's location. Sigh. Sister Haoyu, since you're going to the God's Fallen Clan, I can only come with you as well. In the end, Tian Shuang also went with Fairy Haoyu. The three of them immediately left the Xiandao Empire while Yaxi Lian was also brought along in the Bright Moon Divine Hall. The emperor stood in the floating garden as he stared deeply at Jian Chen as the latter traveled away. The light in his eyes flickered as he seemed uncertain. Fairy Haoyu's previous words continued to ring through his head. Even Fairy Haoyu herself had no idea just how great of an impact her previous words had on the emperor. The emperor firmly remembered all of it. Fairy Haoyu had carried Jian Chen along. The speed of a primordial realm expert was truly unbelievable. The linear lightning release that Jian Chen took pride in was like a snail's pace before the speed at which the two infinite primes traveled at. Gentle moonlight surrounded Jian Chen. He felt like the world flashed by him as if he was teleporting around as he looked through the moonlight. It was unbelievably fast. Fairy Haoyu only needed to take a step, and the distance she traveled would take him a day to cover. Before long, the three of them stopped. They had arrived at an ancient mountain range that was extremely abundant in origin energy. The surroundings were remote, without a single person to be seen in a range of 1,000 kilometers. There were only the calls of birds and beasts running among the mountains. Tian Shuang glanced across the empty space. The powerful senses of the soul that belonged to a primordial realm expert directly expanded and fused with the space there, causing it to distort slightly. Very soon, the space cracked open and rapidly turned into a gate of light. A hunchbacked old man walked out, and he said with his old voice, "State your identities." Tian Shuang of the Xiandao Empire has come to visit your esteemed clan. Tian Shuang clasped her hand at the gate of light. "Please wait. I'll pass this up right this moment." The old man directly disappeared back into the gate of light. Jian Chen felt extremely shocked as he stared at the gate of light. The God's Fallen clan had actually carved out a region of space as land for their clan. This was the Saints' world. Space was extremely tough here, so carving out a region of space under these circumstances was unimaginably difficult. That alone was enough to show just how powerful the God's Fallen clan was. Even though the God's Fallen clan possessed an extremely great status, they clearly would not decline a visit from a primordial realm expert. Very soon, the old man appeared once again and led Jian Chen's group into the clan. Jian Chen's attention was drawn away by the origin energy that was thick enough to almost condense once he entered the God's Fallen clan. He discovered that not only was origin energy extremely abundant within the God's Fallen clan, but even the laws of the world seemed clearer. In such circumstances, cultivation would progress extremely rapidly. It would be fast enough to be described as skyrocketing. There would be no need to absorb divine crystals either. Even comprehending laws of the world would be much easier compared to the outside world. However, Jian Chen also became vigilant after he entered the God's Fallen clan. He deeply hid the twin swords in his body. If he were still a deity or a god, he would have never been bold enough to enter the God's Fallen clan, as he would be afraid that a powerful primordial realm expert would see through the truth about him. However, he was already different from the past. He was confident that even primordial realm experts would struggle to see through him unless they made contact with him. The patriarch is currently waiting in the main hall. "Please come with me," the old man led the way. In the end, he brought the three of them to a majestic divine hall. At the same time, a figure shot towards the direction of the God's Fallen clan with lightning speed in the outside world. He seemed to be fleeing for his life, moving extremely quickly. His speed was far greater than Fairy Hao Yu and Tian Shuang. "I'm almost at the God's Fallen clan. Shi Ziyun has sealed off the northern region, so the God's Fallen clan is my only hope. Once I'm there, I'll be able to leave the cloud plane through the God's Fallen clan's teleportation formation. No matter how great you are, Shi Ziyun, you won't be able to find me when that happens," the person thought to himself as he gritted his teeth. Chapter 1938, Imperial Protector of the Shi Empire. Shi Ziyun, do you think you can act as you wish in the northern region after you've become a chaotic prime? That's only limited to the Shi Empire. The God's Fallen clan is a place where even you won't dare to make trouble. Not to mention that you were once unsociable, so you lack connections. You've never visited the God's Fallen clan before, so you have no connections to them at all. On the other hand, for all the time I've spent as an imperial protector of the Shi Empire, I haven't been as wasteful as you. I've already befriended several elders in the God's Fallen clan, and I showed kindness to the current patriarch before he took the position. Once I make it to the God's Fallen clan, you won't be able to do anything, even if you're the current Shi Emperor. I won't seek out refuge at the God's Fallen clan. I only want to borrow their teleportation formation. With my friendship with the many elders and the current patriarch, it's impossible for them to not agree to such a small request. The old man hurried towards the God's Fallen clan as a strange light flickered in his eyes. This was his only hope of escape. Jian Chen, Fairy Hao Yu, and Tian Shuang all sat on seats within a majestic divine hall in the God's Fallen clan. A rather dignified middle-aged man with quite a striking appearance sat in the center of the hall in luxurious clothes. The middle-aged man was the current patriarch of the God's Fallen clan. Jian Chen did not even have the right to speak here. The patriarch of the God's Fallen clan did not attach any importance to him. As a matter of fact, he had not even glanced at Jian Chen, completely treating him as a follower of Fairy Haoyu and Tian Shuang as if he was their attendant. Fairy Haoyu and Tian Shuang handled the conversation with the patriarch. Here, only they, primordial realm experts, possessed the right to speak. Jian Chen paid no heed to all this. He seemed to be seated there calmly, but he was secretly worried inside. Whether he could use the teleportation formation to return to the southern region or not would be up to Fairy Haoyu and Tian Shuang. The patriarch of the God's Fallen clan is only a god king. It's naturally impossible for a god king to have much power in the God's Fallen clan. It looks like the patriarch before us can't make some of the important decisions. Jian Chen studied the patriarch of the God's Fallen clan. He guessed that the patriarch was probably equivalent to a caretaker, handling menial, day-to-day matters. Patriarch, I'll be honest. We've come because we want to borrow your clan's teleportation formation, Tian Shuang explained her intentions after exchanging pleasantries. You want to borrow the teleportation formation? The patriarch looked at Fairy Haoyu and said, have you also been drawn into the matters with the Shi Emperor? That's not the case. Tian Shuang shook her head, this is my sister. Her name is Haoyu. We want to borrow the teleportation formation because my sister has urgent matters elsewhere, but even the Disk of Heavenly Ways has been rendered useless now that the Shi Emperor has sealed up the northern region. As a result, we could only disturb your esteemed clan. Haoyu. Why does this name sound slightly familiar? The patriarch of the God's Fallen clan mumbled with furrowed eyebrows. Tian Shuang smiled. I don't think you're the only person who is familiar with my sister's name, Patriarch. Even in the entire Saints world, any person who possesses a certain level of status will be familiar with it. After all, only people on the God King's throne can shake up the Saints world apart from those who have made it to the apex of the world. The Patriarch of the God-Fallen clan seemed to think of something when the God King's throne was mentioned. A gleam of light immediately flickered through his eyes, and he stared at Fairy Haoyu in shock. He immediately stood up and clasped his fist. I never thought it would actually be the renowned senior Haoyu from the God King's throne. I have heard of you long ago, but I never thought I'd be able to see you personally today. It really is a great honor for me. The patriarch of the God's Fallen clan was indeed extremely shocked. He had once felt great admiration towards the person called Haoyu, and even the elders in the clan had spoken about her. He just never thought that it would be a woman. Jian Chen was secretly amazed. He could not help but study Fairy Haoyu properly in much surprise. He too had never thought that Fairy Haoyu was once an expert on the God King's throne. I've seen a total of 2 experts from the God King's throne before. One of them is Protector Shui from the Ice Goddess Hall, and she's ranked 9th. The other one is Adriana, who is known as the greatest God King from the God clan. She's ranked in the top 100. I wonder what Fairy Haoyu's ranking was in the past. Jian Chen began to wonder. He felt quite curious. However, he clearly could not ask about this in the current situation. You are too polite, Patriarch. So about the teleportation formation, Fairy Haoyu clasped her hands. The patriarch of the God's Fallen clan sighed gently. He appeared troubled. Just when he wanted to say something, his face suddenly changed, and he looked out the hall. Ha ha ha, I haven't seen you in several millennia, and the patriarch remains the same as before. At this moment, an old voice rang out from outside. An old man strode in as he said that. It's the imperial protector of the Shi Empire. The patriarch of the God's Fallen clan stood up to receive him. He was extremely polite. This imperial protector had assisted him quite a lot for him to become the patriarch. A primordial realm expert. Jian Chen determined the old man's cultivation level as soon as he saw him. The imperial protector exchanged simple pleasantries with the patriarch before also mentioning that he wanted to borrow the teleportation formation. Sigh, you don't know. The ancestor has personally ordered us to shut down our teleportation formation. Without the ancestor's orders, even the elders in the clan would not dare to use it for themselves. And Senior Hao Yu, I don't think I'll be able to help you out with the teleportation formation, the patriarch said powerlessly. What? Your ancestor personally ordered the teleportation formation to be closed down? The Imperial Protector's expression changed when he heard that. His face sank rapidly. What a coincidence. Just when Shi Ziyun sealed up the northern region, you close your teleportation formation as well. Is it to cooperate with Shi Ziyun? That's impossible. It's impossible for Shi Ziyun to be so great that even your God's Fallen clan has to respect his demands. Moreover, he has never had any connections with your God's Fallen clan in the past at all. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered when he heard the Imperial Protector's words. He thought to himself, is the Shi Emperor moving against the Imperial Protector of the Shi Empire this time? If that's the case, he's a complete madman to even kill Imperial Protectors. Just what unknown secret is hidden amongst all of this, where it's enough for the Shi Emperor to even turn on his own primordial realm experts? The Imperial Protector began to speak again. He expressed his desire to stay at the God's Fallen clan for a few days so that he could catch up with the elders he was familiar with. Imperial Protector, the elders are all in secluded cultivation. Moreover, I've received orders from a great elder that our God's Fallen clan is currently undergoing some reorganization, so we aren't able to receive any guests, the patriarch of the God's Fallen clan said reluctantly. Even though he spoke extremely mildly, he still expressed that the Imperial Protector should leave. The Imperial Protector's face darkened. He left the God's Fallen clan in a hurry. He could not insist on staying shamelessly after the God's Fallen clan had asked him to leave. Let's go as well. Seeing how the teleportation formation of the God's Fallen clan was closed, Fairy Hao Yu also left the clan helplessly with Jian Chen and Tian Shuang. After leaving the God's Fallen clan, the three of them appeared in the ancient mountain range once again. The Imperial Protector did not leave. He also stood nearby, except his face was extremely ugly. Before him stood a white figure. Extremely powerful laws of the primordial realm had condensed in the space around him, revolving around his body. It gave off a devastating might that caused space to twist and the surroundings to shake. Time and space seemed to fall into a disorder around him. The power of laws concealed his appearance. Only his white clothes were vaguely visible, while his face was completely hidden. An extremely dense pressure radiated from his body. He seemed like the Emperor of Heaven, where his pressure could annihilate the surroundings just by him standing there. The Shi Emperor. Tian Shuang cried out as she stared at the white figure in shock. Fairy Hao Yu and Jian Chen both stared at him. Shi Ziyun, do you know how many meritorious contributions I've made to the Empire as an Imperial Protector? Are you really going to execute me? The Imperial Protector's face became extremely sunken as he stared at the Shi Emperor firmly. Chapter 1939, Who Knows When? That's right. Imperial Protector, you have indeed made many meritorious contributions to the Empire. The Shi Emperor nodded. He did not deny that fact. The Imperial Protector's face softened when he heard that. He thought that the Shi Emperor was going to let him off. However, the Shi Emperor's voice suddenly became icy cold at this moment. An extremely frigid killing intent radiated from his body, and it was enough to cause the surroundings to change. All the birds and beasts in the surroundings fell silent, collapsing onto the ground whilst trembling. But your great contributions can never make up for what I've lost, nor make up for my eternal pain. I can only vent my hatred by killing all the people who tried to hunt me down in the past, the Shi Emperor said coldly. His icy voice was filled with deep pain. Shi Ziyun, although it was dangerous when you and your wife were being hunted down, didn't you still make it back to the Empire safely in the end, just ruffled? You said you lost something. What did you lose? Even if you lost an extremely precious treasure while being hunted down, hasn't all the people you've killed in the past few years been enough? Shi Ziyun, I did take part in this before, but I did not hunt you down. I only pulled strings in the dark and severed your path home. Even if I am guilty, I do not deserve death. I am willing to make it up to you, the Imperial Protector said rather frantically in an attempt to persuade the Shi Emperor. This was because he could not even flee before the current Shi Emperor. They were both primordial realm experts, but the difference between Infinite Prime and Chaotic Prime was just too great. It was literally a chasm. Ha 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 ha, the Shi Emperor laughed out loud. He sounded slightly crazy. Severed my path home. You severed my path home. Imperial Protector, if you had not pulled strings in the dark and severed my path home back then, how would the matters develop like this today? If you had not severed my path home, why would I, Shi Ziyun, be so insane today, killing so many subjects, senior members, and even my own brothers in the Empire? Imperial Protector, do you know who I hate the most? Not the ones who tried to hunt me down, but the people who severed my path home. Those people deserve death. When he said that last sentence, the Shi Emperor's voice became extremely cold. He had basically forced those words out through gritted teeth. Immediately, he could no longer resist the fury within him, and he sent his hand flying towards the Imperial Protector. This was the Shi Emperor's furious strike. It possessed the cultivation of a chaotic prime. From this strike, the world fell silent, origin energy stopped flowing, the laws of the world were disturbed, and even space trembled violently, almost collapsing. The strike was extremely great, truly enough to destroy worlds. If it were not for the fact that the Shi Emperor had purposefully suppressed it, the terrifying energy would have been enough to destroy the entire region before the attack had even struck. Obviously, the Imperial Protector would not just wait there for his death. He bellowed out, and a set of God artifact armor appeared on his body, radiating with terrifying pulses of energy. At the same time, a golden and violet duster appeared in his hand. Frightening energy erupted from it like a volcano as he tried to receive the Shi Emperor's strike with his full strength. The Imperial Protector was extremely powerful. When he struck out, he erupted with devastating might. If it were not for the fact that layers of defensive formations from the God's Fallen clan protected the surroundings, probably the entire mountain range would have been demolished because of the strike. After all, he was not as powerful as the Shi Emperor. When the Shi Emperor struck out, he possessed great control over his own energy, and he was able to target his enemies while keeping the surroundings intact. However, when the Imperial Protector struck out, he did not even try to control his strength. He used everything he had right from the get-go. The difference between their strength was simply too great. The Shi Emperor knocked away the Imperial Protector's duster with the strike, and then his hand heavily landed on the Imperial Protector's God artifact armor. The armor was a God artifact. However, its glow immediately dimmed, and the Imperial Protector opened his mouth and spat out blood. His face paled. Tell me. Aside from the people I've killed already, who else was involved in the matter in the past? The Shi Emperor stared at the Imperial Protector coldly. Powerful killing intent engulfed the Imperial Protector, showing him no mercy at all. In the past, he had been pushed to the end of his rope. He fled across the entire cloud plain, and he did not even know who many of the people who pursued him were. Although he managed to find out about a few of them and eliminated them mercilessly, there were still a few people who hid very well. Shi Ziyun, just what was it that made you become so vicious and merciless? The Imperial Protector asked. He was unwilling to accept the situation. No matter how he tried, he was unable to connect the Shi Ziyun before him to the indifferent Prince Ziyun who never desired fame or to better other people. Since you won't speak, I'll show you what being merciless means. I have my ways of making you speak once I get back to the palace. A sliver of viciousness appeared in the Shi Emperor's eyes. He bound the Imperial Protector and picked him up brutally before silently vanishing. He had already left the region. Is this an chaotic prime? They're actually so frightening. Jian Chen did not return to his senses after the Shi Emperor left. He stared at where the Shi Emperor stood before in a daze. This was the first time he had been so close to a chaotic prime, so the shock he felt was greater than anything in the past. Not only did he feel like he could not breathe when the Shi Emperor struck out earlier, but even his heart had stopped beating. His body was completely frozen. It was as if an invisible force had restrained his entire body. The Shi Emperor's strength was just too frightening. Even when he was not targeting Jian Chen deeply understood his own insignificance. I never thought the Shi Emperor would move against an imperial protector of the Shi Empire this time. Sigh, that imperial protector was an important subject to the Shi Empire. I wonder just what the Shi Emperor lost when he was being hunted down that made him become so mad that he would even kill imperial protectors, Tian Shuang said sternly. That's the problem of the Shi Empire. It has nothing to do with us. Let's go, said Fairy Haoyu. With a wave of her hand, moonlight surrounded Jian Chen again, and she took him away. Before long, Jian Chen had returned to the Xiandao Empire. Due to his connection with Fairy Haoyu, he possessed a rather special status in the empire. The emperor had personally granted him a hall for him to stay in. Jian Chen settled down in the imperial palace temporarily, but he could not relax at all. He was basically filled with worry. He locked himself up in his hall all day long as he thought long and hard about any way to leave the northern region. He was very worried about the safety of Sacred Feather and so on. For several days, Jian Chen did not even take a single step out of the imperial palace. However, no matter how hard Jian Chen racked his brains, he failed to come up with a single viable method at all. The end conclusion was that unless the Shi Emperor removed the seal over the northern region, he was unable to leave at all. Jian Chen had mentioned finding the Shi Emperor, but as soon as he said it, Tian Shuang shut him down, as the chances of that happening was even less significant than using the God's Fallen Clan's teleportation formation. Just as Jian Chen was in a state of complete unease, Fairy Haoyu visited his residence. She also sighed gently when she saw the worry on his face. It's all because of me. I shouldn't have brought you to the northern region. Fairy Haoyu, you can't put it like that. If it were not for you, who knows if I'd still be alive right now. I can only hope that the Shi Emperor removes the seal over the northern region as soon as possible, said Jian Chen. The Shi Emperor will probably keep up the seal for a while longer. I've just received the news that the Shi Emperor has already gone to one of the peak sects of the Shi Empire, the Heaven-Cracking sect. He asked them to hand over 2 of their great elders. The Heaven-Cracking sect is one of the 4 great organizations in the Shi Empire. The great elders there are all infinite primes. Moreover, they have an even more powerful ancestor. The entire sect only has 3 great elders. The Heaven-Cracking sect will naturally refuse to hand over 2 of the 3, so they've already locked down the sect. They're currently locked in a stalemate. Even the ancestor of the sect has come out to plead for mercy, but the Shi Emperor refuses to budge. There probably won't be a conclusion in the near future, said Fairy Haoyu. Jian Chen groaned greatly. The Heaven-Cracking sect was a peak organization in an eternal empire, so they must have been more powerful than the Xiandao Empire. Even the Xiandao Empire had teleportation formations across regions, so it was impossible for the Heaven-Cracking sect to not have one. However, if the situation continued like this, the Shi Emperor would basically maintain the seal over the northern region to prevent the 2 great elders from escaping. So when would he be free to leave? Jian Chen immediately felt a headache. He was distressed. Chapter 1940, The Heavenly Yin Body and Innate Body of Ways. The problem won't be solved even if you keep worrying like this. Why don't you calm down instead and use this time to cultivate properly so that you can increase your strength as much as possible? After all, even if you return to the southern region with your current strength, you won't be of much help. Once a slightly more powerful God King targets the people beside you, you'll be completely useless, said Fairy Haoyu in concern. Even though she was a primordial realm expert, she did not act haughty before Jian Chen at all. Don't you have the God King level plant cores and monster cores on you? I can refine away the poison in there. If you absorb the energy from them, they should be able to increase your strength by quite a lot. Naturally, Jian Chen did not hesitate at all. He immediately took out the God King level plant cores and monster cores from his space ring, passing them all to Fairy Hao Yu. These 2 space rings came from that little whore. Now that she's a hostage, these items belong to you. Fairy Hao Yu passed 2 space rings to Jian Chen. Jian Chen glanced past the 2 space ring. In the end, he only took one of them and said, "This one belonged to the God King I killed, so it's my spoils from that battle. Yashi Lian's space ring should go to you. You should be in greater need of wealth to recover your cultivation." Fairy Hao Yu smiled. The plane where the Moon God Hall is located is extremely distant from the Cloud Plane. I basically have to cross most of the Saint's world to get there. It's impossible to cover all the divine crystals I need for this journey with the measly wealth of a God King, so you should keep this space ring instead. A God King's wealth is nothing to me. Moreover, do you really think that I've come to the Xiandao Empire to play? I've come here only because of Sister Tian Shuang's request. I am helping her deal with one of their enemies. Once the matter has been completed, they will give me enough 5-colored divine crystals. Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Jian Chen deeply after reaching there before saying, "So I'll be leaving the Cloud Plane soon. The enemy should be very powerful, right?" Seeing how even the Xiandao Empire can't deal with them, Jian Chen asked. Fairy Hao Yu did not give him a direct answer. Peak infinite primes aren't really weak. Even though there's more than one primordial realm expert in the Xiandao Empire, dealing with an enemy like that will result in great losses or even unendurable prices. Afterwards, Fairy Hao Yu stood up and made her way out. She said at the same time, "I'll go refine the poison in the cores. You shouldn't spend every day in the Imperial Palace. This is the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. It's extremely busy and many items that are rare in the divine kingdom of Pingtian are extremely common here. Go out and have a look. You might benefit unknowingly." Right when she left the hall, Fairy Hao Yu seemed to think of something. She stopped and turned around to speak in a playful tone, "Oh right, do you remember those 2 princesses from last time? Their constitutions are extremely special. One of them possesses the rare heavenly yin body, while the other possesses the innate body of ways. If they successfully mature, their futures will be unlimited. If you can cultivate with them, you'll also benefit greatly, where your cultivation will skyrocket. Why don't you think about it? If you agree, I can be the matchmaker and request the Emperor to engage them to you." Jian Chen smiled bitterly. "Fairy Hao Yu, you can't mess around with this. I don't have any of those intentions towards those 2 princesses at all. Even though their constitutions are special, I don't necessarily have to rely on them to reach the peak of my cultivation path." Fairy Hao Yu blinked and smiled. "Think over it carefully. No ordinary people can tell their constitution. Even my sister Tian Shuang hasn't sensed it. If you go for it now, there'll be a very large chance of success. I can persuade the Emperor. If you keep tarrying and a chaotic prime discovers how special those 2 sisters are, you'll be out of luck." With that, Fairy Hao Yu disappeared outside the hall. Jian Chen was left speechless in the luxurious hall. He casually rummaged through Yashi Lian and the God King from the Daoist sect of Calm Cloud space rings, and his eyes immediately lit up. After hesitating slightly, he left the Imperial Palace with the 2 space rings. Fairy Hao Yu was right. If he continued to worry like this, it was useless as long as the northern region remained sealed. He could use this time to do something useful instead. As my strength increases, the startling rainbow sword is slowly becoming not enough. If I can find a supreme quality saint artifact that suits me, it would be time to switch over. Also, the Tian Yuan clan should soon gain even more overgods, so I should prepare some high-quality saint artifacts beforehand. Supreme quality saint artifacts are basically non-existent in the divine kingdom of Ping Tian, and high-quality saint artifacts are extremely rare, so there's not much room for choice. The imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire should have much more high-quality saint artifacts, so I can buy some beforehand and leave them in the clan. There should also be supreme quality saint artifacts for sale. With that in mind, Jianchen left the imperial palace. He strolled through the imperial capital all by himself. He held a map in his hand that recorded all the stores in the city. There were clear explanations beside each store, clearly indicating what kind of items they sell, which organization they belong to, and so on. Naturally, Jianchen knew that the imperial capital was holding a martial competition, but he had no interest in that. Holding the map he had obtained from an old man who he did not know in the imperial palace, he made up his mind about a place and quickly hurried over there. Jianchen searched through several stores on that day. He spent extremely extravagantly, buying over a dozen high-quality saint artifacts and 3 supreme-quality saint artifacts. He had spent an astronomical amount of divine crystals. In just that day, Jianchen had spent more divine crystals than he had managed to obtain himself during his entire time in the saints' world. After all, these were space rings 2 god kings had owned. It was impossible for overgods to rival the wealth of god kings. In particular, Yaxi Lian's space ring contained so much wealth that it left Jianchen tongue-tied. Buying all the saint artifacts had only cost him the wealth from the overgods he had slain on the battlefield and the wealth from the god king of the Daoist sect of Calm Clouds who had ambushed him. Jianchen had yet to touch anything in Yaxi Lian's space ring. In reality, the wealth in Yaxi Lian's space ring was over 10 times more than all the divine crystals he had spent today. Just the supreme-grade divine crystals had reached over 100 blocks. In his eyes, Yaxi Lian had already become no different from a dead person. Killing her would only take a single thought from him. Her space ring had naturally become the spoils of the battle as well. As a result, Jianchen felt that it was his right to use these space rings. He did not find it inappropriate in the slightest. Next, Jianchen went to the pill stores after buying the saint artifacts. He purchased a large number of pills that were suitable for all levels of cultivation. He had even bought out all the 10,000-year god origin pills from all the stores in the nearby streets. 10,000-year god origin pills were extremely rare in the divine kingdom of Ping Tian. They were so expensive that almost no one could afford them. However, in the imperial capital, they were common items. They could be found everywhere, and they were sold for an extremely cheap price. Moreover, Jianchen spent over a dozen supreme-quality divine crystals to purchase 2 God King-level formations, one for attack and one for defense. He wanted to use them to protect the Tian Yuan clan. Even though they only possessed the might of early God Kings, they would be extremely powerful formations in the divine kingdom of Ping Tian. Moreover, he had bought them in the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. If it were the divine kingdom of Ping Tian instead, he probably could not purchase any of them no matter how many divine crystals he had. Jianchen's great spendings naturally attracted the attention of quite a few people. However, this was the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire, so all the people who were able to come here were far more knowledgeable and experienced than the people of the divine kingdom of Ping Tian. As a result, they were only surprised by the number of 10,000-year god origin pills Jianchen had bought. They did not pay any attention to the divine crystals on him. After all, many experts from various large organizations had gathered in the imperial capital due to the martial competition. Some of them would not seem special at all, but they would actually be hidden experts. Naturally, a few people who could not see through Jianchen's cultivation believed that he was someone like that. However, pills with heavy side effects like the 10,000-year god origin pill never had high sales volumes in the imperial capital. Very few people would consume them. Yet, someone had suddenly decided to splurge out on them, buying out all of them in the pill stores across several streets. Naturally, this matter confused and intrigued many people. As a result, the news that someone was buying God Origin pills in large quantities silently spread. Naturally, the pill stores that Jian Chen visited were utterly delighted, as believed they had made huge profits. The pill stores that Jian Chen did not visit all became green with envy. They had even sent people to go find the mysterious person who bought so many 10,000-year God Origin pills. Someone has actually purchased so many 10,000-year God Origin pills. The side effects of the pills are so great that many people can't even ingest a single one. Isn't this person just insane by buying so many all at once? Sister Xing'er, do you think this person is crazy? Surely he's not thinking of increasing his cultivation by ingesting so many 10,000-year God Origin pills, right? On a busy street in the imperial capital, the two princesses, Xing'er and Lan'er, strolled around. Several guards in simple attires stood beside them. Xing'er's beautiful eyes also widened when she heard Lan'er's words, and she said, "Sister Lan'er, I heard that some magical beasts with powerful bodies can ignore the side effects of the 10,000-year God Origin pills. Do you think the person who bought all the pills is a magical beast in human form? Ha ha ha, even if he's a magical beast, there's no need to buy so many of these pills. It's literally only something that someone who is dumb but has a lot of wealth can do. I think this person is definitely a huge idiot. I love making fun of these dumb idiots. I often tease father's mount until I drive it insane. It's hilarious when I think of it. I really do want to see what kind of magical beast he is, having bought so many 10,000-year God Origin pills. If it's appropriate, taming him into a mount isn't a bad idea." Lan'er immediately became furious after that. Only if you hadn't said that, Sister Xing'er. As soon as you mention a tough body, I think of that horrible person. He also has a tough body, where our full-powered attacks failed to harm him at all. Oh my God. Sister Lan'er, why did you have to bring that up? Why did you have to mention that person for no good reason? I'm fuming too when I think of him. Xing'er ground her teeth as she showed much resentment. Chapter 1941, Spatial Fantasy Meteorite. What's this? Suddenly, Xing'er's face froze, and she stared at a store to the side of the street. The store specialized in selling saint artifacts as well as various strange materials. However, a blue light shone in the store right now, and it even reached the street. The blue light was not intense, nor did it give off any pulses of energy. However, a light flickered like stars in there. It seemed like the blue sky had suddenly become filled with stars, which was an extremely enchanting sight. Let's go and have a look. The sudden blue light immediately attracted Xing'er and Lan'er's attention. Immediately, the two of them seemed to have forgotten about Jian Chen. They held hands and quickly ran into the store. In the store, the shopkeeper held a wooden box at the counter. A piece of fist-sized rock laid in the wooden box. The blue light that seemed to possess stars originated from the rock. Not only had the blue light filled the entire store, but even the shopkeeper's ancient face had been dyed blue. I want this spatial fantasy meteorite. Shopkeeper, can you go cheaper? An old man stood before the shopkeeper. He was currently negotiating a price with the shopkeeper. 500,000 high-grade divine crystals is already my cheapest price. I really can't go any lower. The shopkeeper kept a business smile plastered across his face as he spoke amiably. Xing'er and Lan'er just happened to see the rock at this moment, and the starry light of the stone immediately enchanted them. They could not help but cry out, "What a beautiful piece of rock! If we take it back and make it into jewelry, it'll definitely be extremely pretty. Shopkeeper, we want this rock. We'll give you 1,000,000 high-grade divine crystals." It's the two princesses. I never thought that the spatial fantasy meteorite would catch the eyes of the two princesses as well. The shopkeeper clearly recognized Xing'er and Lan'er. He bowed in a hurry as he smiled. He spoke extremely politely. After learning the identities of the two women, the old man who originally planned to purchase the spatial fantasy meteorite only let out a helpless sigh. He knew that it was impossible for him to buy the spatial fantasy meteorite anymore, so he left in pity. "Shopkeeper, here. 1,000,000 high-grade divine crystals." Xing'er immediately took out a space ring to pay. "Wait." However, a voice suddenly rang out. With a flash, a person had silently appeared before Xing'er and Lan'er. When Xing'er and Lan'er saw the person, their faces immediately changed. They became furious as they glared at him. They said angrily, "It's actually you. You sure are bold, showing yourself before us again." The person who had suddenly appeared was Jian Chen. Clearly, Jian Chen was also surprised. Before, he had focused all his attention on the spatial fantasy meteorite. Seeing how someone wanted to buy it, he hurried over as quickly as he could. He really did not see the two princesses there. Jian Chen immediately felt a headache when he saw how furious Xing'er and Lan'er were. He hesitated slightly before clasping his hands apologetically. "Princesses, what happened that day was purely a misunderstanding. I was also a victim. Shut up, don't mention that ever again." However, before Jian Chen could finish speaking, Xing'er and Lan'er bellowed at Jian Chen secretly while feeling embarrassed. They looked at him with murderous gazes. They did not dare to say something like that aloud, as they were afraid that it would only perpetuate the matter. Jian Chen glanced at Xing'er and Lan'er. He sighed before ignoring them. He turned around and said to the shopkeeper, "Shopkeeper, I also happen to be in need of this rock. I'll pay 2,000,000 high-grade divine crystals." The shopkeeper hesitated and looked towards the two princesses. Xing'er and Lan'er both gritted their teeth. They stared at Jian Chen with much resentment and raised the price as well. "We'll pay 5,000,000 high-grade divine crystals. No one can take away something that has caught our eyes." Jian Chen felt a headache. He knew that Xing'er and Lan'er wanted to make things difficult for him. He could give up on other items and not play along to their tune, but the spatial fantasy meteorite was a material he needed for forging the twin swords. "This material is extremely important to me, so I must obtain it. I'll pay a block of supreme-grade divine crystal." Jian Chen knew that nothing he said would work. He could only keep increasing the price. The spatial fantasy meteorite was not unique, but if he missed it, he had no idea when he would be able to find a second piece. As a result, he had to obtain all the materials needed for forging the twin swords when he saw them, regardless of the cost. 2 blocks of supreme-grade divine crystal. Xing'er and Lan'er upped the price as they bit their lips. They completely hated Jian Chen. They completely believed that Jian Chen was doing this on purpose. Moreover, when they thought about what happened the other day, they could not just give in when confronted with how overbearing Jian Chen was. As a result, even though they knew the price had completely exceeded the actual value of the rock, they still would not back out. Isn't this Princess Xing'er and Princess Lan'er? Ha ha ha, what a coincidence. I never thought I'd be able to meet the two princesses here. Looks like we're really fated to meet." A young man in golden robes who seemed slightly arrogant strode in. He stared at Xing'er and Lan'er excitedly. Behind the young man were a few more young men in similar attire. They all followed behind the golden-robed young man politely. Xing'er and Lan'er immediately became slightly impatient when they saw the young man. However, Xing'er seemed to think of something soon after. She smiled deeply with other intentions and crossed her hands. She fumed with a stern face, "What a bore. I managed to come out with Sister Lan'er after so much difficulty, and I just happened to come across something I liked, but who knows where this ignorant person has come from, trying to steal the item that has caught both of our eyes." "Oh? Has something like that happened? Who's bold enough to steal the item that the two princesses want?" A cold light flickered through the young man's eyes when he heard that, and he spoke icily. Xing'er crossed her arms. She looked at the ceiling and said without even looking back, "Who else can it be with so many people here? The princesses are benevolent and will never stoop as low as others, but there just happens to be some people who don't appreciate it and are insatiable. If the two princesses have to personally deal with someone like that, it'll basically be dirtying the princess's hands. Leave this to me. I guarantee that the outcome will satisfy the two princesses." The golden-robed young man smiled at Xing'er and Lan'er. When he saw Jian Chen, his gaze immediately became sunken. He swung his hand and said, "Come, break this person's arms and legs and cripple his cultivation. Then throw him out for me." Chapter 1942. Getting out of hand. The golden-robed young man spoke very casually, without treating Jian Chen with any importance at all. Even though he had no idea who Jian Chen was, he believed that there was no reason for him to learn this at all given his personal status. This is the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. There are clear rules that forbid fighting. Do you plan on ignoring them? Jian Chen stared at the golden-robed young man calmly. Rules? The young man sneered and stared at Jian Chen like he was a joke. Rules only affect ordinary people. As for me, I can ignore them. Seeing how Jian Chen and the golden-robed young man were in conflict, Xing'er and Lan'er were naturally delighted. Moreover, they did not forget to fan the flames. That's right. With young Master Zhou's status, these rules indeed do not affect him. Young Master Zhou, what are you rambling on about with this person? Why don't you hurry up and do it? The two of us find him irritating just by looking at him. The golden-robed young man smiled from ear to ear when he heard them refer to him as young Master Zhou. He felt extremely happy. When he heard their soft and sweet voices, he felt power swell up within him. Not only was this the first time the two princesses had called him young Master Zhou, but this was also the first time they had spoken to him in such a gentle tone. The sudden change with the two princesses did not make the young man feel that something was off. Instead, it roused him. He believed that this was a great opportunity to show off his strength to the two princesses. The young man suddenly grew serious as a condescending expression filled his face. He said in a voice that he believed to be very dignified, which left no room for argument, "After you cripple this person's cultivation, look into his background." Humph, his crimes for offending the two princesses are so great that just crippling his cultivation isn't enough. The clan behind you has to pay a certain price as well. If he doesn't have a clan and is only an independent cultivator, his crimes will be passed on to his parents. We'll get your parents to pay. The young man spoke extremely coldly as if he controlled Jian Chen's life. He did not realize that the two princesses' personal guards had said nothing when they personally witnessed someone fight for what the princesses wanted as well. Jian Chen's face became cold in that instance when he heard that the young man wanted to touch his parents. At the same time, the people behind the young man arrived before Jian Chen. Two of them lunged at Jian Chen, while the others all took out their saint artifacts and swung them at Jian Chen's limbs without any mercy at all. One of them stabbed his sword towards Jian Chen's dantian. Xing'er and Lan'er watched on as they took things easy. They smiled as if their scheme had succeeded. They knew Jian Chen's strength and also knew that he had the support of a primordial realm expert. However, they just wanted to make trouble for him so that he would not have an easy life. Jian Chen did not even look at the people who attacked him. His gaze was locked onto the young man. He flicked his fingers a few times, and a few strands of sword chi flew out rapidly. Ding! 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 With a series of metallic sounds, the saint artifacts in the hands of the people who attacked Jian Chen snapped at that moment. Moreover, the sword chi from Jian Chen did not disperse after destroying their saint artifacts. It continued on without weakening at all, heading towards their bodies. All the people who tried to lay their hands on Jian Chen staggered backwards as they shrieked out. Their faces became extremely pale, as they had already been heavily injured. The power from the laws of the sword wreaked havoc within them, making them all spurt blood. Jian Chen turned into a blur. He arrived beside the golden-robed young man in a single instance and grabbed him tightly by the neck. He said coldly, "I only planned on giving you a small punishment originally, but you should have never, ever threatened my parents. Even if God Kings do that, I will make them pay the price." With that, there was a sudden flash of light from his hand that held the young man's neck. Sharp strands of sword chi entered the young man's body in an extremely brutal method, directly heading towards his dantian and obliterating it. The young man trembled violently. Blood spurted from his mouth like a fountain. Unfortunately, Jian Chen's hands were wrapped around his neck, so he could not make any sounds at all. Otherwise, his miserable shrieks would have probably shocked everyone already. Afterwards, Jian Chen smashed the young man's head gently before throwing him onto the streets outside like a dead dog. He did not even glance back at him. Jian Chen's strike had almost shaken the young man's soul into pieces. He directly fell unconscious. Fortunately, Jian Chen had no intentions of killing him. He had only heavily injured his soul, so it would be difficult for him to recover. His dantian was destroyed, and his soul had almost dispersed. Even if the young man managed to survive these wounds, he would basically be reduced to a cripple. After doing all that, Jian Chen acted as if nothing had happened at all. He arrived beside the spatial fantasy meteorite and stared at Xing'er and Lan'er. He said coldly, "I will pay 3 blocks of supreme-grade divine crystal for this piece of spatial fantasy meteorite. Do you still want it?" The two princesses stared at the golden-robed young man who laid on the street like mud in a daze. Using the senses of their soul, they completely understood the young man's wounds, which completely shocked them. They were no longer in the mood to fight over the spatial fantasy meteorite with Jian Chen anymore. In the end, Jian Chen purchased the spatial fantasy meteorite for an astronomical price of 3 blocks of supreme-grade divine crystal. However, Jian Chen had obtained Yaxi Lian's huge wealth. Even though 3 blocks of supreme-grade divine crystals was a huge amount, he did not feel any pain when he spent it at all. Zhou Chu has actually been crippled. Isn't this a little too vicious? After all, behind Zhou Chu is, Xing'er and Lan'er only looked at one another. Their faces were rather ugly. They had realized that the matter had gotten out of hand. They wanted to find trouble for Jian Chen, but they never thought he would be so vicious, directly crippling Zhou Chu. They never expected something like that. A case where deliberate injuries were caused had happened in the imperial capital. Naturally, the matter spread rapidly. In a short amount of time, the area around the young man had become packed by people who had heard of the news. Many of them stared at the young man and pointed as they discussed. "That seems like young Master Zhou Chu of the Skycloud sect. Heavens, who is bold enough to injure the young master like this?" The Skycloud sect is one of the peak sects in the Xiandao Empire. Even the imperial family must show them respect. Their status is extremely great. I heard that Zhou Chu is the descendant of one of the sect's primordial realm ancestors. Now that Zhou Chu has been beaten to a pulp, almost to the point where he's a cripple, the Skycloud sect will probably never just let this matter be. Nephew Zhou Chu. As people discussed among themselves, a cry rang out from the sky. A white-robed, middle-aged man descended as he gave off a tremendous pressure. He stared at Zhou Chu, who laid on the ground, with an ugly expression. Who did it? Who was it? Who injured nephew Zhou Chu like this? When the white-robed man checked Zhou Chu's wounds, he became utterly furious as extremely intense killing intent radiated from him. Chapter 1943, Battling Fei He. The killing intent directly caused the temperature of the surroundings to plummet as if it had become a cavern of ice. The bustling street had already become completely crowded. However, everyone shivered from the white-robed, middle-aged man's killing intent. They felt it pierce their bones, and all of them could not help but back away. Even over-gods behaved like that. God King. Countless people cried out inside while their gazes towards the man became filled with angst from the bottom of their hearts as well as some envy and eagerness. God King was a cultivation level that they could only dream about. It was their life goal. Who is it? Who did this? The white-robed God King was extremely furious as he bellowed out. Then, his gaze locked onto the store where Jian Chen was before long. This was because a few disciples from the Skycloud sect still laid on the ground inside. Their blood had formed pools on the ground, giving off a metallic smell. In the store, the two princesses behaved innocently. They looked at Jian Chen with some pleasure due to his situation before leaving the store with their guards. However, the two of them did not walk off. They stood nearby and observed with great interest. The white-robed God King naturally recognized the two of them. After glancing past the two of them, he glared at Jian Chen. At this moment, Jian Chen had also emerged from the store after putting the spatial fantasy meteorite away. He saw the God King's murderous gaze, but he remained completely calm and composed. Did you injure Zhou Chu? The God King's gaze was extremely terrifying. With that, the monstrous presence of a God King radiated from him, crushing down on Jian Chen like a mountain. At this moment, another powerful presence appeared. An armored, middle-aged man with a striking appearance had appeared in the air. In the distance, large squadrons of armored, Imperial Guards hurried over quickly. It's General Jean of the Imperial Guards from the Imperial capital. People cried out when the armored middle-aged man appeared. General Jean appeared there and glanced past Zhou Chu, who had basically been crippled. He immediately frowned. He deeply understood just how special Zhou Chu's status was in the Skycloud sect. Of the two primordial realm ancestors of the Skycloud sect, one of them was Zhou Chu's senior. Now that Zhou Chu had become so heavily injured in the imperial capital, he would not be able to separate himself from the matter as the general responsible for order in the imperial capital. General Jin's face instantly sank. He glanced around, and just when he was about to ask who the troublemaker was, he suddenly discovered Jian Chen and was stunned. His sharp instincts allowed him to realize who the troublemaker was, so he immediately felt a headache overwhelm him. He had no idea what to do. The people on both sides both possessed great backgrounds. Neither of them could be offended. That's right, I injured him. Are you going to ask why I injured him? Jian Chen stared at the God King responsibly and said calmly. Fellow Jian Chen, Brother Fei He, there are some misunderstandings in this matter. Let's not jump to conclusions. We can talk after we've looked through the entire matter, said General Jean. Originally, he had rushed over here aggressively to arrest the troublemaker, but now, he could only try to persuade both parties gently. A misunderstanding? Nephew Zhou has already become so injured. It doesn't matter what kind of misunderstanding there is, as it'll definitely develop into a grievance. General Jean, there's no need to say anything more. It doesn't matter what this person's background is. He has to pay for what he has done, the God King said coldly. It was impossible for him to not tell that Jian Chen's background was not simple from General Jin's attitude. However, they, the Skycloud sect, had truly never feared anyone before. Since you've crippled Zhou Chu, I'll cripple you as well, and then I'll take you back to the sect so that the ancestors can handle your punishment, said the white-robed God King. With that, he directly extended a finger towards Jian Chen. His gesture possessed the power of laws in the surroundings. God King level laws instantly condensed around the finger, shooting towards Jian Chen's dantian as a chain. Oh no, retreat. The expressions of the people who watched on from the surroundings changed when they saw the white-robed God King strike out. They all fled wildly. The might of a God King's attack was simply too powerful. With their strength, they would be drawn into the attack even with the protection of the powerful formations in the imperial capital if they were too close. General Jin was filled with bitterness. He did not believe that Jian Chen was Fei He's opponent, but there was also a terrifying existence behind Jian Chen, so he could not allow anything to happen to him at all. However, just when General Jin wanted to stop Fei He's attack, a powerful sword chi suddenly appeared below. It stunned the general. With a flash of golden light, it shot towards Fei He with energy that was terrifying enough to surprise General Jin. Behind the golden strand of sword chi, Jian Chen wielded the starling rainbow sword. He seemed like he had fused with his sword as he radiated with intense light. He followed the golden sword chi, lunging towards Fei He as if he was unstoppable. Boom! The golden sword chi collided with Fei He's chain. It was like a high-speed collision of two planets, shattering into pieces with a deafening sound. It turned into a terrifying shockwave of energy that swept out. Immediately, a formation appeared in the imperial capital, completely isolating the energy so that it could not even leave a scratch on the city itself. A light flashed through Fei He's eyes. He stared at Jian Chen in shock. Through Jian Chen's presence, he could obviously tell that he was not a god king and just a peak over god. An over-god had actually managed to block his attack in an open confrontation and not lose the upper hand. It was unbelievable. But clearly, Jian Chen's attack had not ended. After the Daluo sword shattered, he charged through the region where energy wreaked havoc while he was coated in white light, lunging towards Fei He. In a single instance, he had arrived before Fei He. It's actually a supreme over-god from the over-god's plaque. Fei He said coldly. He did not become flustered at all when he faced Jian Chen's attack. He swung his hand calmly, directly catching Jian Chen's startling rainbow sword. Jian Chen sneered. The power of laws and chaotic force immediately erupted from the startling rainbow sword, dispersing the layer of power of laws around Fei He's hand. Even though Fei He was a god king, it was impossible for his body alone to handle the sharpness of the startling rainbow sword. Jian Chen used some force to cut through Fei He's hand. He stabbed out as a smear of blood spurted out from Fei He's hand. Jian Chen directly went for his heart. Fei He's eyes exploded with light. At that moment, his gaze had become extremely shocked. In the next moment, a sword appeared in his hand. It danced and struck Jian Chen's startling rainbow sword with lightning speed, knocking it aside. Tai sword technique. Jian Chen's reaction was extremely quick. He formed a seal and fused with his sword. As a sword, he directly rammed towards Fei He. During this time, Jian Chen's entire body seemed to have become a sword of great might, giving off a monstrous presence. Chapter 1944, Shocking Battle Prowess, What a Powerful Over-God. Fei He felt secretly shocked. The strength that Jian Chen had displayed filled him with disbelief. In an open confrontation against him, Jian Chen had failed to lose the upper hand and even managed to draw blood. Fei He's face sank when he saw the blood on his hand. This wound was nothing to him, but the disgrace would be permanent. This person must rank within the top 3 on the over-god's plaque. Only people as great as them can possess such unbelievable battle prowess, Fei He thought quickly. However, his movements did not slow down. As his hand changed between seals, the sword immediately began to spin rapidly before his chest. Rings of powerful, spiral sword chi appeared as the sword spun. It radiated with powerful pulses of energy as well as a might that belonged to the world. As a mighty god king, Fei He was actually using a battle skill against an over-god's attack. World-shattering, form of the mountain splitter. Fei He bellowed out. The sword that spun around stabbed out with lightning speed along with a strand of powerful, spiral sword chi. The strike was extremely powerful. As the sword tore through the air, the spiral sword chi shook, causing the space in the surroundings to pulse and gently tremble. The might of the world had caused the distant crowd to retreat rapidly once again. The might of a god-king's battle skill was extremely shocking. To many of the people who were not even over-gods, it was almost impossible for them to witness a god-king using a battle skill. As a result, the pressure naturally made many of them feel like the world was ending. General Jin's expression changed drastically. He was in a hurry to stop Fei He. He knew who stood behind Jian Chen, so once that terrifying primordial realm expert behind him became angered from Jian Chen's injuries, the consequences would be unthinkable. He had heard that the powerful primordial realm expert had even gone as far as to spend a valuable three-colored divine crystal on the disk of heavenly ways to venture to the distant southern region. The expert even captured a commander of the 9 armies, humiliating her before everyone. However, Fei He ignored him. As a mighty god-king, an over-god had injured him. If he did not make the over-god pay a certain price, he would never be able to quell his anger. There's going to be a lot of trouble, General Jin swore inside. He was already too late to stop Fei He. He had witnessed Jian Chen's strength and understood he possessed the battle prowess to fight god-kings in an open confrontation. However, the battle skill of a god-king was on a completely different level compared to the casual strike of a god-king. Moreover, the battle skill was of an extraordinary grade. It was one of the most powerful battle skills from the Skycloud sect. Even General Jin would have to take it on seriously if he was on the receiving end of the attack. Everything happened in a split second. There was a deafening boom, and Jian Chen's Tai sword technique had already collided with Fei He's battle skill. The observers all sensed the eruption of a terrifying energy. The ground shook violently, and they lost sight of Jian Chen and Fei He completely. The violent energy shockwaves had completely drowned out their figures. I hope Jian Chen doesn't become too heavily injured, or how can I suppose to resolve everything? General Jin silently prayed for Jian Chen. Everything had happened just too quickly, where he did not have the time to stop it at all. Linear lightning release. However, a bellow suddenly rang out from the violent storm of energy. Everyone only saw a streak of white light shoot through the storm of energy at an unbelievable speed before disappearing into the distant sky. It was just too fast. Countless people failed to see it clearly at all. Even General Jin only managed to barely see a blurry, elongated figure in the streak of light through the senses of his soul, even though he was a god-king. A while later, the rampaging energy dispersed and revealed Fei He. Currently, Fei He's face was rather pale, and he was filled with shock. He stared at his chest in a daze. His chest had already been dyed red with blood. A fist-sized hole had appeared, stretching from his chest through to his back. All his organs had been destroyed already. Meanwhile, Jian Chen had vanished. General Jin stared at the hole in Fei He's chest in a daze. His face was also filled with shock as his heart churned. Immediately, he cast his gaze into the distance afterwards. He saw that in the direction the white light had vanished off into, Jian Chen stood on the startling rainbow sword as he traveled back towards here like a comet. He moved extremely quickly. In just a few seconds, he had returned. What happened? How did that young man suddenly run off to such a distant place? How did that young man leave? Among the countless observers, quite a few of them stated their confusion. Oh my God! Sister Lanner, look, look! Senior Fei He of the Skycloud sect has been injured. Xinger also stared at Fei He's wound in shock from nearby as she shook Lanner's arm. Lanner was also stunned. She rubbed her eyes firmly while her cherry lips were agape. She was extremely shocked. Even against an over-god who's much weaker than you, you must be reasonable even if you are a god-king. Although over-gods are much weaker than god-kings, they're not people you can just harass. Jian Chen stared at Fei He as he stood on his sword in the air. Fei He raised his head all of a sudden. He glared at Jian Chen, and there was even heavy killing intent in his gaze. He was a mighty god-king, yet an over-god had injured him like this. The humiliation coupled with Jian Chen's cold tone made the shame he experienced multiply. Gradually, it turned into killing intent. Jian Chen's face remained the same when he sensed the killing intent from Fei He. He said coldly, "There is no reason for you to feel humiliated after being injured by my hands because you are not the first God King to be injured by me. Before you, I've personally killed a God King while I was injured." Fei He's eyes immediately became filled with shock when heard that. He was speechless. Even General Jin became stunned by Jian Chen's words. An over-god had actually killed a God King while he was injured. If this feat made it out, it was enough to spread across the entire Saints world. This was because it was just too shocking. In the end, Fei He shot a sharp glance at Jian Chen. He snorted coldly before leaving with Zhou Chu, who laid there like mud. This over-god strength had left him deeply shocked. He knew that even if he remained here, he probably would not be able to benefit. The matter at hand was for him to hurry back to the sect and report it to the higher-ups. Chapter 1945, Visitors from Outer Space. After Fei He left, General Jin arrived before Jian Chen. He stared at him with some lingering fear. Even though he had personally witnessed the earlier scene, he still found it difficult to accept that an over-god had actually injured a God King. To General Jin, it was like a dream, unrealistic. "Brother Jian Chen, are you fine?" General Jin asked with much concern. Even his way of referring to Jian Chen had changed. At that moment, General Jin completely treated Jian Chen as an equal. He even showed some respect. As a God King, he was insurmountable. Even in the Xiandao Empire, God Kings possessed extremely great statuses and were people who possessed authority. There was no need for them to behave like this before over-gods at all. However, General Jin could not help but be so polite right now. Jian Chen shook his head, expressing that all was fine. He did not recognize the armored God King before him, so after exchanging some simple pleasantries, he directly left and returned to the imperial palace. "Sister Lanner, did that really just happen? That pervert is clearly only an over-god. How did he beat a God King?" Xing'er said as she held Lanner's hand. Lanner sucked in a deep breath and gently patted her own chest, slowly calming herself down. She said firmly, "It's real. Sister Xing'er, we've underestimated this person. His strength is enough for him to rank amongst the top 3 on the over-god's plaque at the very least." The top 3, Xing'er immediately covered her mouth. At the same time, Tian Shuang stood in a garden within the forbidden grounds of the imperial palace as she stared in Jian Chen's direction. She sighed in amazement. "I never thought this Jian Chen would be so powerful. He fought a God King as an over-god and still managed to achieve victory when the God King used his battle skill. Even though this was due to the God King's underestimation, it's not easy for an over-god to injure a God King. No wonder Sister Hao Yu values this person so much. With the battle prowess he has shown today, his future will definitely be limitless. I just wonder how he compares to the supreme over-god who ranks first on the over-god's plaque." Jian Chen paid no attention to the disturbance the battle had created. He had already returned to his temporary residence in the Xiandao Empire now. Jian Chen sat before a table in the decorated room. The table was covered with neat bottles. There are over 1,000 10,000-year god origin pills. With so many and the 8 God King level plant and monster cores from Fairy Hao Yu, I'll be able to reach the 12th layer of the chaotic body. However, the 12th layer of the chaotic body is equivalent to God King, but my current level of comprehension remains at over-god. As a result, I have to quickly increase my comprehension of the laws of the sword, or I won't be able to reach the 12th layer, Jian Chen thought. It's just that increasing my comprehension to the major achievement of sword spirit is difficult. Back on the battlefield on the boundary of the divine kingdom of Ping Tian in the southern region, a piercing smell of blood filled the air. It did not disperse no matter what, and just a single whiff of it was enough to cause people to vomit. Corpses had already formed a thick layer on the battlefield while the blood had pooled into huge lakes. The battle that had lasted for so many days had created all this, claiming countless lives. The battle continued. Several dozen god kings from both sides fought in a particularly intense battle in outer space. The tremendous shockwaves of energy in outer space could even be clearly sensed from the distant ground. Below the god kings, the over-gods fought at an altitude of several tens of thousand meters. They also fought with great intensity. Many of them were already covered in blood. They had not rested at all since the battle began. Countless soldiers gathered in the fortress below, standing in formations to fend off the 10,000-man formations from the Empyrean demon cult. The 10,000-man formations had been reduced to over a dozen from the initial 30. Both sides suffered losses in the battle. Let alone over-gods, even 2 or 3 god kings had died. The sound of a zither hung in the surroundings. It expanded as a visible sound wave, stretching across the entire battlefield. The sound possessed an irresistible charm. When it rang out, all the people on the battlefield were affected to varying degrees. The armies of the divine kingdom of Pingtian all became filled with fighting spirit and courage from the sound. They charged at their enemies with extraordinary determination while their battle prowess was fully displayed as well. Under the influence of the sound, many people from the Empyrean demon cult felt their heads grow heavy as their consciousness blurred. In the end, they could only use 70 or 80% of their strength. Originally, the Empyrean demon cult's assault had forced the armies of the divine kingdom of Pingtian into a retreat. However, with the Zither's appearance, they were finally able to gather together, becoming matched in strength with the armies from the Empyrean demon cult. On the walls of the fortress sat a beautiful woman in a purple dress. Her beauty was indescribable, so great that it would probably be only seen in heaven. An ancient zither rested on her legs. As her slender fingers stroked the strings, she produced music that was filled with charm. Each note formed a visible ripple of sound. Each note possessed the might of laws. This woman was Shengwan Mu'er. The news of the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chen, being taken away by the commander of the 7th Army, Yaxi Lian, had already spread by now. Naturally, Shengwan Mu'er heard the news as well, so she could no longer pay heed to Jian Chen's orders for her to remain in the clan from worry. She hurried to the front lines as soon as possible. Her arrival had basically turned the situation here around. Beside Shengwan Mu'er stood Sacred Feather, Houston, Roy Jean, and so on. They stood around her sternly, protecting her and stopping any people from disturbing her. All of them were covered in blood and suffered different levels of injury. Aside from them, the god ancestors from the Dong'an province stood around her as well, taking part in her protection. From the Empyrean demon cult, there were constantly over-gods who wanted to break free from their fight and stop Shengwan Mu'er from playing her zither, but they would be completely entangled with their opponents, which made the matter impossible. The over-gods on the Divine King's side naturally understood just how important Shengwan Mu'er's existence was to the battlefield below, so they all kept their opponents busy to the greatest of their ability. 2 streaks of light suddenly shot past a place distant from where the several dozen god kings fought in outer space. They moved with unbelievable speed such that even god kings would only be able to catch a blur. The streaks of light directly shot past the skies of the cloud plain, traveling towards the depths of space. However, when the light passed by the southern region of the cloud plain, it suddenly reversed before stopping above the southern region in the end. It was extremely distant from the cloud plain, even several tens of million kilometers away from where the god kings fought. Only now was the streak of light visible. It was a small flying vehicle that radiated with powerful pulses of energy. Among them was the might of the laws of the world. The flying vehicle was a god artifact. It's the 3rd ancestor zither of the demonic cry. 2 graceful, middle-aged women emerged from the flying vehicle. Celestial bodies flickered through their eyes as their gazes resonated with the laws of the world, directly piercing the distant space and locking onto Shangguan Mu'er, who was located in the fortress on the boundary of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Shock filled their faces. Chapter 1946. The Taoist sect of divine sound. The two middle-aged women stared at Shangguan Mu'er from the distant outer space. Their gazes became uncertain. One of them said, "The zither of the demonic cry is a treasure bound to the third ancestor's life in the past. It also symbolizes her. Now that the zither has appeared with this woman, and this woman possesses quite impressive accomplishments in the way of music, is she the reincarnation of the third ancestor?" As soon as she mentioned the reincarnation of the third ancestor, her face became filled with excitement. She felt very eager. The other woman stared at Shangguan Mu'er and studied her seriously. She said with an extremely firm voice, "No, she's not a reincarnation of the third ancestor. She is only someone who obtained the third ancestor's treasure out of coincidence. If she was really the third ancestor's reincarnation, the artifact spirit of the zither of the demonic cry would have been awakened long ago. At the same time, she would have already returned to the sect." Sigh. It really isn't the reincarnation of the third ancestor. Although she can use the zither of the demonic cry, she can't use a sliver of its power at all. At the same time, she only possesses a connection to the zither of the demonic cry. It has not accepted her as its master. But since she can obtain the third ancestor's zither of the demonic cry, it's her fate. At the same time, she also obtained a type of approval from the zither of the demonic cry, so we should accept her into our sect. As they spoke, the two middle-aged women were already flying towards the fortress of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. They moved extremely quickly, crossing an extremely great distance with a single flash. They appeared before Shangguan Mu'er silently. The two middle-aged women just floated there. They completely concealed their presences, so they seemed like ordinary people. It was impossible to discover their existences through the senses of the soul. They two of them stared at Shangguan Mu'er and paid no attention to the chaotic battlefield in the surroundings. Shangguan Mu'er, Sacred Feather, and so on saw the two middle-aged women suddenly appear in the first moment. Their faces all changed suddenly. Sacred Feather, Rui Jin, and the others immediately arrived next to Shangguan Mu'er as their faces became filled with caution. They did not attack. They could sense that the two women were powerful. "Seniors, may I ask for the reason why you have come?" Shangguan Mu'er asked. Although she spoke, she never stopped playing the zither. "Child, do you know the origins of the zither in your hand?" a middle-aged woman asked. Her gaze towards Shangguan Mu'er was filled with gentleness. Although this was the first time she had seen Shangguan Mu'er, she felt a sense of closeness towards Shangguan Mu'er due to the zither in her hands. Shangguan Mu'er's eyes narrowed. She already knew that the zither of the demonic cry was not as simple as it seemed, and she had guessed that it probably had important origins. The woman seemed to know about the zither of the demonic cry. "Junior does not know. If Senior is willing, please enlighten Junior," said Shangguan Mu'er. She multitasked, playing the zither to disturb the armies of the Empyrean demon cult as she conversed with the two women. The middle-aged woman looked at the zither of the demonic cry, and a sliver of reminiscence appeared on her face. The owner of this zither was a peak, famed expert of the saints' world in the past. She was also one of the three ancestors of our Taoist sect of divine sound. We called her the third ancestor. After a period of silence, Shangguan Mu'er said, "To be frank, Senior, I obtained the zither of the demonic cry accidentally in a lower world. Since this belongs to your esteemed sect's third ancestor, I will return the zither after the battle." Shangguan Mu'er was helpless as she said that. The strength of the two women before her was unfathomable. If she wanted to take the zither away with her forcefully, she still would not be able to keep it. The middle-aged woman who spoke before shook her head with a smile, we only passed by this plane incidentally and came across the third ancestor's treasure that was bound to her life, which was why we came to have a look. We don't want to take away the zither of the demonic cry. The zither of the demonic cry is rather special. It was nurtured for many years by the third ancestor's flame of life, so it slowly metamorphosed from an ordinary object. It holds part of the third ancestor's vital energies, so the zither of the demonic cry is similar to a saint or god artifact, yet not one. It was just that with the third ancestor's death, the zither of the demonic cry vanished. Originally, we believed it had been destroyed in that great battle. We never thought we'd come across it again today. The woman paused there and stared at Shengguan Mu'er with great interest. Then, she continued, since you were able to obtain this zither in the lower world, it means that fate has led you to the zither and our Taoist sect of divine sound. Even though our sect has requirements for accepting disciples that are extremely strict and require many stages of selection, you can directly join our Taoist sect of divine sound since you have obtained the third ancestor's zither of the demonic cry. At this moment, the other woman said, "Child, get ready, and you can leave with us so that we can go back to the Taoist sect of divine sound." The sect is located in the central region of the Skyfire Plain. It's extremely distant from the Cloud Plain such that you won't be able to cover the distance by yourself. That's why we have to take you with us. "No, you can't take Sister Mu'er away," Sacred Feather said firmly. "Seniors, I am currently busy with important matters, so I am unable to go to the Taoist sect of divine sound with the two seniors. Moreover, I never agreed to join," said Shengguan Mu'er. The two middle-aged women ignored Sacred Feather. They said to Shengguan Mu'er, "You obtained the third ancestor's treasure, so you must join our Taoist sect of divine sound. Moreover, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you. And I assume you are referring to this battlefield by important matters? This is easy to deal with." With that, the middle-aged woman looked at the Divine King and the vice-leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huaiyan. At this moment, the battle between Huaiyan and the Divine King had reached an extremely crucial point. They had discovered the arrival of the two women, but they did not become distracted at all. Their battle seemed peaceful, but it was actually extremely dangerous. "You must be the people behind the battle. It's about time you finish your game of chess," said the middle-aged woman. Her voice seemed to possess a mysterious power, turning into a ripple that engulfed the chessboard between the two of them. Boom! Suddenly, the chessboard exploded without any prior signs, immediately ripping open space as devastating energy. It directly expanded in all directions. The energy was so powerful that it was enough to cause over-gods to feel despair. Even the expressions of the God Kings changed drastically. The terrifying energy had erupted after two primordial realm experts had charged it up for a very long time. "Disperse!" Suddenly, the middle-aged woman called out with much composure. Her voice seemed to transform into the laws of the world, directly dispersing the devastating energy. The Divine King and Huaiyan both retreated in horrible shape. The middle-aged woman had forcefully stopped their battle. The Divine King stood on the fortress walls as he stared at the two women sternly. He felt shocked by the power of the woman. "Greetings from Huaiyan, vice-leader of the branch on the Cloud Plain of the Empyrean demon cult. May I ask who the two seniors are?" Huaiyan clasped his fist at the two women and asked calmly. "The Empyrean demon cult?" The two middle-aged women mumbled to themselves as they immediately frowned. "Child, you can't interfere with the battles of the Empyrean demon cult. Even if you remain here with your current strength, you won't be able to turn the situation around in the end. Sure, you may be controlling it barely, but with the Empyrean demon cult's strength, getting through it won't take any effort at all. Come with us," one of the middle-aged women said to Shengguan Mu'er. "Child, you can't interfere with the battles of the Empyrean demon cult. Even if you remain here with your current strength, you won't be able to turn the situation around in the end. Sure, you may be controlling it barely, but with the Empyrean demon cult strength, getting through it won't take any effort at all. Come with us, one of the middle-aged women said to Shengguan Mu'er. Thank you for your concern, seniors, but I don't want to leave right now. My husband has been captured by the commander of the 7th Army, and his situation is currently unknown. If I don't find my husband, I won't leave here, Shengguan Mu'er said firmly. Dumb child. You obtained the 3rd Ancestor's supreme treasure. Once you join our Taoist sect of Divine Sound, your status will definitely be extraordinary. It won't be like the regular disciples. If you have potential, our Taoist sect of Divine Sound will definitely spend resources to nurture you, giving you a chance to rise up. As for your husband, he can't even deal with a mere commander from the Empyrean demon cult. How can someone like him have you, a disciple from the Taoist sect of Divine Sound, as his wife? Child, forget your husband. You will definitely rise up among people. In the future, your accomplishments will be so great that your husband can only look up to you. He's not suitable for you, the middle-aged woman said sincerely. With their cultivation levels as primordial realm experts, there was completely no need for them to speak so politely to an overgod. However, the 3rd Ancestor's past status in the Taoist sect of Divine Sound was so great that it could not be surpassed. She had also been a supreme expert that the two of them respected very much. Since Shengguan Mu'er had obtained the 3rd Ancestor's supreme treasure, their attitude towards her changed. Our Taoist sect of Divine Sound is located in the central region of the Skyfire Plain. In the future, if the people from your clan want to visit you, come to the Skyfire Plain to look for us. Child, it's time for us too. Once you get to the Taoist sect of Divine Sound and witness the prodigies raised by those large sects on the Skyfire Plain, you will discover that the husband you miss so much is actually nothing. With that, the two middle-aged women directly waved their hands and took Shengguan Mu'er away with them, whether she agreed to it or not. Sister Mu'er. Sacred Feather cried out. His eyes were filled with fury, and he immediately pursued them. However, with his strength, it was impossible for him to follow two primordial realm experts. In the blink of an eye, he had lost their tracks. Houston, Roy Jean, and the others on the fortress all revealed very ugly expressions. Shengguan Mu'er had just been taken away right before them, yet there was nothing they could do. It filled them with a sense of grievance, and they also felt extremely helpless. First, Jian Chen had been taken away by the commander of the 7th Army, and his current situation was unknown. Now, Shengguan Mu'er had been taken away as well. The people from the Tian Yuan clan felt gloomy over this. Shengguan Mu'er's departure naturally had an extremely great impact on the battlefield. Without her music, the soldiers of the Empyrean demon cult immediately became more and more courageous as they fought. They were able to use their full strength again. On the other side, the armies of the Divine Kingdom were unable to maintain the balance when they faced off against such a violent army. They immediately lost the upper hand. Even though they possessed a numerical advantage, their strength was on a completely different level. Kill! Roy Jean yelled out and charged onto the battlefield with a heavy heart. Houston and the others also charged towards the soldiers of the three armies afterwards. They did not say anything. As for the Divine King, he stood on the fortress walls as he stared at the vice-leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan. Neither of them could send out an attack, as once they did, a battle between primordial realm experts would start. In the imperial palace of the Xiandao Empire, Jian Chen had just bid farewell to a few princes from other empires and prodigies from other sections. He returned to his temporary residence by himself, and a sliver of exhaustion appeared on his face. In the past few days, his battle against Fei He of the Skycloud sect had already spread across the entire northern region, with the news of his victory included. It had raised the attention of many large organizations in the northern region. As a result, people from different places constantly visited him in the past few days. They were either the princes from a few empires, young masters from large clans, or disciples of large sections. With so many prodigies gathered together, there was naturally some fighting. At the same time, they felt doubt towards Jian Chen's rumored strength. As a result, Jian Chen faced the challenges of many prodigies in the past few days. At the very start, he turned them down, but the more he turned them down, the more they wanted to challenge him. In the end, the people who challenged him only increased. In the end, after running out of choices, Jian Chen could only spar with the prodigies, revealing some of his strength. However, through this, Jian Chen befriended quite a few prodigies from those large sects and princes from the empires. He had learnt about all sorts of odd matters in the northern region from them. At this moment, a young man seemed to be around the same age as Jian Chen rushed over in a hurry. He said, "Brother Jian Chen, Princess Tian and the fifth prince of the Xi Empire have come to visit. They want to see you." The young man directly arrived before Jian Chen. He was both overjoyed and excited. He said enthusiastically, "Brother Jian Chen, it's Princess Tian and the fifth prince. Do you know great their statuses are in the Xi Empire? Please tell me, Brother Yan Shun." Jian Chen's eyes lit up when he heard the Xi Empire mentioned. This young man was called Yan Shun, and he was a prince of the Xiandao Empire. In the past few days, basically all the princes in the Xiandao Empire had expressed their goodwill towards Jian Chen. They did their best to establish a relationship with Jian Chen. As a result, Jian Chen basically knew all the princes in the Xiandao Empire. Prince Yan Shun cleared his throat and explained in a hurry, Princess Tian's nobility was personally conferred by the Xi Emperor himself. It said that she is connected to the Empress by blood. Not only is she the Empress Junior, but she's also one of the most beloved people of the Empress. It said that in the Xi Empire, apart from the Xi Emperor, she's the closest person to the Empress. The imperial family in the Xi Empire is just too vast. All the children of the Emperor become princes and princesses, while the descendants of the siblings of the Emperor also become princes and princesses. As a result, there are plenty of princes and princesses in an eternal empire. But in reality, many princes and princesses only have this status. They're actually extremely distant from the Emperor. As a matter of fact, there are a few princes and princesses who have never even spoken to the Emperor before. However, Princess Tian is someone who can visit the Empress whenever she pleases, and the Xi Emperor had personally conferred her title to her. As a result, her status in the Xi Empire is so great that almost no one can match up to her. As for the fifth prince, he's the person that the Xi Emperor appreciates the most. The father of the fifth emperor had the best relationship with the Xi Emperor when the Xi Emperor was still a prince. As we all know, the Xi Emperor has no children. Even though the fifth prince does not directly descend from the Xi Emperor, many people believe that the Xi Emperor is raising him as his successor from how much he appreciates him. Prince Yan Shun told Jian Chen everything he knew about Princess Tian and the fifth prince. He did not put up any haughtiness as a prince before Jian Chen. "Brother Yan Shun, let's go then. Let's meet Princess Tian and the fifth prince as soon as possible." Jian Chen's eyes shone brighter and brighter after listening to Prince Yan Shun's introduction of Princess Tian and the fifth prince. In the end, he hurried off in a manner even more urgent than Prince Yan Shun. "Brother Yan Shun, let's go then. Let's meet Princess Tian and the fifth prince as soon as possible." Jian Chen's eyes shone brighter and brighter after listening to Prince Yan Shun's introduction of Princess Tian and the fifth prince. In the end, he hurried off in a manner even more urgent than Prince Yan Shun. He was extremely attached to his friends and family in the southern region, except he could not leave since he was trapped in the northern region right now. Now that Princess Tian and the fifth prince who possessed great status in the Xi Empire had come to visit, Jian Chen saw a sliver of hope of him leaving the northern region. Under Prince Yan Shun's lead, Jian Chen passed through beautiful hall after beautiful hall before arriving in a majestic hall at the very heart of the imperial palace. Jian Chen saw a male and female seated in the hall as soon as they entered. They were young and they were talking with the emperor of the Xiandao Empire leisurely. The woman possessed a beauty that was enough to outshine the moon. She was filled with a presence of nobility, making her seem divine and otherworldly. The young man seemed righteous. His eyes shone brightly, and as he spoke, he naturally revealed a somewhat dignified presence as well as a firm resolution. He seemed a little like a ruler. He vaguely possessed the presence of a ruler, like a true dragon. No wonder the Shi Emperor appreciates the fifth prince so much. If the fifth prince becomes the emperor, he'll definitely be a great, talented one. Jian Chen studied the man and woman in the hall. Without any introduction, he knew that they must be Princess Tian and the fifth prince from the Shi Empire. In particular, Jian Chen had gained an impression of the fifth prince from the first glance. In the past few years, Jian Chen had seen quite a few princes, but it was rare for anyone to possess the fifth prince's presence. As a result, he could not help but take notice of the fifth prince. The emperor stood up and nodded at Jian Chen with a smile. Afterwards, he introduced him to Princess Tian and the fifth prince, Princess Tian, this is fellow Jian Chen from the southern region. The graceful Princess Tian and the imposing fifth prince immediately stood up when they heard that. They clasped their fists at Jian Chen and exchanged pleasantries. You young people should talk. I'll go deal with some matters first, the emperor said to them extremely politely before leaving with Prince Yan Shun. In the blink of an eye, only Jian Chen, the fifth prince, and Princess Tian remained in the majestic hall. Jian Chen, there's no need for you to refer to me as the fifth prince. That'll be alienating me instead. My name is Shi Hao, so you can directly call me that, smiled the fifth prince. Afterwards, he looked at Princess Tian beside him and said, as for the Princess Tian beside me, her name is Shangyun Shuixian. Aside from being the Princess Tian of our Shi Empire, she's also the treasured daughter of the Shangyun clan. Greetings. You are welcome to just call me Shuixian. Princess Tian smiled faintly and nodded at Jian Chen slightly. After mingling with quite a few princes and prodigies in the past few days, Jian Chen gained a rough understanding towards the division of strength on the Cloud Plain. Naturally, Jian Chen knew about the Shangyun clan. Although the Shangyun clan was not located in the Shi Empire, they were a famed clan in the northern region. Many ancient empires and large organizations had to show them respect. This was because the current empress of the Shi Empire came from the Shangyun clan. Afterwards, Jian Chen and the fifth prince conversed freely. Clearly, the fifth prince wanted to rope in Jian Chen, so he completely put down his identity as a prince of the Shi Empire. He only behaved like an ordinary friend. The fifth prince was extremely patient. Although he wanted to rope in Jian Chen, he had not mentioned a single word of it. As they conversed, Princess Tian would add a little to the conversation from time to time. She asked Jian Chen questions about cultivation modestly. She revealed respect and admiration for Jian Chen through both her tone and expression. Shi Hao, Lady Shuixian, I'll be honest. I have extremely important matters that require me to rush back to the southern region as soon as possible, but the entire northern region is currently sealed by the Shi Emperor. I was wondering if you had any methods for me to get back to the southern region as soon as possible. Jian Chen finally mentioned his main intentions after talking for several hours. The fifth prince and Princess Tian frowned when they heard that. After a moment of thought, the fifth prince said, Jian Chen, this matter is rather troublesome. If it was any other time, I can easily let you use the regional teleportation formation at our Shi Empire. Even if the regional teleportation formation at the Shi Empire is unavailable, I believe I'll be able to borrow the teleportation formations in the ancient empires and some large organizations with my prestige. However, now that Uncle Ziyun has personally sealed up all the teleportation formations in the northern region, basically no one will go against his word in the northern region with his current prestige. It's impossible for the ancient empires to be bold enough to use their teleportation formations, and even the teleportation formation at our Xi Empire has been closed as well. You can only use it if you gain the approval of Uncle Ziyun or the ancestral emperors. The fifth prince smiled in a self-deprecating manner. Jian Chen, don't try to depend on the fact that I'm one of the princes of the Xi Empire right now. Princes like me can't just meet with the ancestral emperors of the Xi Empire. As for Uncle Ziyun, he's currently locked in a stalemate against the ancestor of the heaven-cracking sect. And with Uncle Ziyun's temperament, it's extremely likely that he'll start fighting with the heaven-cracking sect. I'll only displease him if I go find him now. The regional teleportation formation at our Shangyan clan is closed as well. Jian Chen, we probably won't be able to help you with this, said Princess Tian as well. Jian Chen became disappointed with that. He said, the Xi Emperor is just a little too vicious. He really isn't going to let off anyone who hunted him down in the past. The Xi Emperor had captured an imperial protector of the Xi Empire earlier, and now he has gone to go deal with the heaven-cracking sect, a peak sect in the Xi Empire. If this continues, it'll be very bad for the Xi Empire. Moreover, the Xi Emperor's revenge has trapped many people here, making them unable to leave. Jian Chen felt very helpless. Yeah. Uncle changed drastically after ascending as emperor. He wasn't like this before. It's just a pity that no one can persuade and convince Uncle in the current empire. Even the ancestral emperors can't do anything about him, the fifth prince added helplessly. Faint worry appeared on his face. In the current imperial family of the Xi Empire, only a few primordial realm experts were left after all the slaughtering his uncle did. It filled the entire empire with angst and unease. Princess Tian sighed gently from that. She became slightly depressed and said gloomily, actually, you can't blame Uncle. Everything is bound by karma. If it weren't for the relentless pursuit of the people before, causing Aunt to lose her daughter, my uncle would have never become like that. What? Lose her daughter? The fifth prince was stunned. Even Jian Chen became surprised. He stared at Princess Tian. At this moment, Princess Tian suddenly returned to her senses. She realized her mouth had slipped, so she immediately covered her mouth tightly out of surprise. Xiaofan, what did you just say? My uncle lost her daughter when he was hunted down in the past? Why haven't I ever heard my uncle mention he had a daughter? The fifth prince stared at Princess Tian in doubt. Xiaofan, what did you just say? My uncle lost her daughter when he was hunted down in the past? Why haven't I ever heard my uncle mention he had a daughter? The fifth prince stared at Princess Tian in doubt. The Xi Emperor had no descendants. Everyone knew that. The fifth prince became rather confused now that Princess Tian had suddenly mentioned he had a daughter. Don't ask about this anymore, okay? If Aunt learns that I disclosed this, she would never forgive me. Princess Tian became rather flustered. A sliver of panic appeared on her face. She knew extremely well just how great of a mistake she had made by accidentally disclosing this secret. The fifth prince and Jian Chen realized the severity of the matter when they saw how frightened and flustered the princess had become, so they no longer asked about it. However, they, as sharp-minded people, could draw many conclusions from that small detail. Jian Chen, Shihao, don't tell this to anyone else, okay? This is one of the greatest secrets in the empire. There aren't many who know. Princess Tian was no longer able to remain as composed as before. Panic filled her face as she pleaded to Jian Chen and Shihao. Don't worry. Xiaofan, we'll never tell anyone about this. Right, Jian Chen? The fifth prince swore. Jian Chen nodded as well, promising to not disclose the secret. Princess Tian was no longer in the mood to stay in the Xiandao Empire anymore after this had happened. She bid farewell to Jian Chen in a hurry before leaving uneasily. With Princess Tian's departure, the fifth prince naturally did not stay behind all by himself. He gave Jian Chen a jade talisman as a method of contact before leaving the empire as well. The fifth prince was extremely clever. He knew that the chances of roping in a supreme prodigy like Jian Chen were almost non-existent, so he did not dare to mention the matter at all before Jian Chen. He only wanted to establish a friendship. If they could become friends, everything would become far easier. Jian Chen accompanied the prince and princess out of the imperial capital before returning to his residence. He thought about how the Shi Emperor possessed a daughter. I never thought the Shi Emperor was only taking revenge for his daughter by killing off so many primordial realm experts. When is this vengeance going to end, so I can return to the southern region sooner? Jian Chen thought. He sat in his residence as he felt very worried. However, Jian Chen's body suddenly jolted at this moment. A rather unbelievable thought had suddenly crossed his mind. He immediately thought it through and analyzed the matter quickly. Right now, basically no one in the Shi Empire knows that the Shi Emperor and his wife had a child. Even the authoritative imperial protectors of the Shi Emperor don't know. Then it's certain that the Empress did not fall pregnant in the Shi Empire. Otherwise, it would be impossible to hide it. It would have become public knowledge long ago. As a result, the Empress' pregnancy probably happened when they were being hunted down. It has been over 2,000 years since then. Also 2,000 years ago, the patriarch of the Mo clan picked up an infant girl outside and she possessed a jade pendant with the words, Shiyu on her, with nothing else. I've seen this pendant. It's made from extremely tough material and is extraordinary. Even I would not have been able to damage it at all in the past. As a result, the person who managed to carve words into the pendant must have been extremely powerful. The time matches, the surname matches, and the gender matches as well. Surely Shiyu isn't. Immediately, Jian Chen felt extremely surprised when he thought up to there. He felt disbelief. After hesitating slightly, Jian Chen suddenly turned towards the direction in which Princess Tian and the fifth prince had left. He chased after them with his full speed. Outside the imperial capital, a luxurious carriage and 9 exotic beasts towed quickly shot through the air. Several dozen guards with powerful presences stood close to the carriage. The leader was a god king. Princess Tian and the fifth prince currently sat in there. Shuaixian, can you tell me everything in detail? Since when did my uncle have a daughter? Why don't I know about it? The fifth prince asked out of curiosity. The luxurious carriage was also a treasure that had an extremely great defense. It was covered in formations, so it was impossible to eavesdrop on any conversations happening inside. I need to start from when my uncle and aunt were being hunted down by people. Back then, when they were being hunted down, the Empress accidentally discovered that she was pregnant. After giving birth to the child, my aunt made up her mind to abandon her, as she was out of choices and was unable to protect her newly born daughter. She hoped this could allow her daughter to survive, Princess Tian said slowly. Is that the case? I never thought that I, Shi Hao, would actually have a younger sister. What about afterwards? What happened to my sister? Is there any news? The fifth prince was greatly surprised before questioning in concern. Princess Tian shook her head. Her face was gloomy. The pursuit had forced aunt and uncle to extremely dire straits. They fled across the entire cloud plain, where they were so heavily injured that they almost lost their lives many times. The situation was so dangerous that they did not even know where they had abandoned their daughter. They don't know about her situation right now. It's just that after uncle became the emperor, he offended far too many people for his revenge, so they never dared to make the fact that they had a daughter public. They were afraid that their enemies would find their daughter first. As a result, they could only send trusted subordinates to scour the entire cloud plain secretly. However, it has been so many years, and there's still no news. Princess Tian looked at Shi Hao after speaking up to there. She said, Shi Hao, you understand how important this matter is, right? You can't tell anyone about it. Xiaofan nodded sternly. Shuaixian, I understand. I never thought there would be a secret side to the story of why my uncle changed so much and became so merciless. Now, I don't feel like my uncle has gone overboard at all. At this moment, a guard's voice rang out from outside. Fifth Prince, Princess Tian, Jian Chen has come running. He says he wants to see Princess Tian due to something important. Jian Chen has come running? What does he want to do? The fifth prince and Princess Tian were doubtful. Very soon, the carriage came to a halt and the prince and princess dismounted. They hovered in the air as they stared at Jian Chen, who had come running after them. Jian Chen clasped his fist towards the fifth prince before telling the princess, Princess Tian, can we step aside to talk about something? The princess nodded before immediately flying to somewhere far away with Jian Chen. The fifth prince stood with his arms crossed. He stared at them from afar and was filled with doubt. He mumbled to himself, that's strange. Jian Chen is suddenly looking for Shuaixian. Why? In the distance, Jian Chen cast down a barrier that isolated sound before taking out an embroidered box from his space ring. He said sternly, Princess Tian, there's something I must request you to do for me. Please directly give this box to the Empress or the Shi Emperor. Princess Tian accepted the box curiously. She examined it in her left hand and asked in confusion, Jian Chen, what is this? Just treat it as a little gift for the Empress and the Shi Emperor from me. They might like it. However, you must get the Empress or the Shi Emperor to personally see what is inside, Jian Chen said extremely solemnly as if he was telling her to do something extremely important. Okay, I'll personally deliver it to aunt and uncle, said the princess before returning to her carriage and leaving with the fifth prince. Jian Chen did not leave. He hovered in the sky as he stared in the direction that the carriage had disappeared off to. He thought, although I also crafted that pendant on a whim, both the appearance and engravings are exactly the same as the pendant I saw from Shiyu, apart from the fact that the material is nothing special. If Shiyu really is the lost daughter of the Shi Emperor, they'll naturally recognize it once they see the pendant. If not, there's nothing for me to lose. It's not like the Shi Emperor and the Empress will be offended. In the next few days, the number of people who visited Jian Chen decreased. It gave Jian Chen a few days of peace. In the next few days, the number of people who visited Jian Chen decreased. It gave Jian Chen a few days of peace. However, during that time, the emperor of the Xiandao Empire had come looking for Jian Chen. He wanted to propose an engagement with Jian Chen, where his two daughters, Xing'er and Lan'er, would be engaged to Jian Chen. Naturally, Jian Chen objected this matter, turning him down without any hesitation at all. Even though he had learnt that the two princesses possessed special constitutions from Fairy Haoyu, he had no such intentions. Aside from that, the Skycloud sect, one of the peak sects of the Xiandao Empire, had sent a god king to the imperial palace. He did not come asking for an explanation from when Jian Chen injured Zhou Chu and Fei He. Instead, he brought rich gifts and expressed his most sincere apologies, wishing to clean the slate between Jian Chen and the sect. Jian Chen understood that this was all because Fairy Haoyu supported him, resulting in a deterrence, which was why the Skycloud sect was so willing to bow down. There were no great, irresolvable grievances between him and the Skycloud sect. He did not have any intentions of becoming their enemy either, so Jian Chen happily accepted the apology. Two other matters that shook up the entire northern region happened during this time. The first matter was that the first, second, and third armies of the Empyrean demon cult had created a huge massacre near the edge of the northern region in their attack, which directly infuriated the Empress of the Shi Empire. The Empress set out personally and single-handedly killed her way over, heavily injuring the vice-leader who watched over the armies in the northern region. With that, the movements of the Empyrean demon cult came to a temporary halt in the northern region. The second matter was even more shocking. After being locked in a stalemate with the Shi Emperor for several days, the ancestor of the heaven-cracking sect finally came to terms with the Shi Emperor, handing over the two great elders who had once taken part in the hunt. The news that the heaven-cracking sect had come to terms created a huge shockwave among the various powerful organizations in the northern region. They were all astounded. The heaven-cracking sect also possessed a chaotic prime. Even the imperial family of the Shi Empire had to treat them with respect at other times. However, the ancestor of the heaven-cracking sect actually chose to give in to the Shi Emperor's forceful demands, handing over his two infinite prime great elders. The entire heaven-cracking sect only possessed 3 great elders. No one dares to refuse the Shi Emperor with his might. The Shi Emperor's prestige became even greater after this. People praising the Shi Emperor could be heard everywhere in the northern region. The matter between the Shi Emperor and the heaven-cracking sect has finally come to a conclusion. I hope the seal over the northern region will be released soon. Jian Chen sat in the imperial palace as he stared at the tremendous formation in the sky. He was secretly eager. I've completely refined the poison in these plant cores and monster cores. At this moment, Jian Chen heard Fairy Hao Yu's voice. She walked over slowly in a white dress and said, "It's best if you don't reveal them in the southern region. Behind them is a prince of the Blood Sun Empire." The status of the Blood Sun Empire in the southern region is equivalent to the Shi Empire in the northern region. You know what the consequences are. Jian Chen accepted the plant cores and monster cores from Fairy Hao Yu. They were all fist-sized and had become transparent after the poison within them had been refined. He could even vaguely see pure, powerful energy slowly move about. It was extremely lively. Fairy Hao Yu raised her head towards the sky. She stared at the barrier of light that sealed the entire northern region and said, "Since the matter between the Shi Emperor and the heaven-cracking sect has reached a conclusion, this seal shouldn't last for too long. Tomorrow, some people from the Xiandao Empire will be moving against a large sect that they have grievances with. Once I complete this deal with the Xiandao Empire, I will probably leave the Cloud Plain and return to the Moon God Hall." Fairy Hao Yu struggled to remain calm when she mentioned the Moon God Hall. Her feelings fluctuated slightly. It has been so many years. I wonder how the Moon God Hall is right now. Has my father discovered Nan Potion's schemes? It's a pity that the Cloud Plain is just too far away from the Moon God Hall. It's impossible to find any information about it here at all. A sliver of worry appeared on Fairy Hao Yu's face. Fairy Hao Yu, this Nan Potion must be very powerful, right? If the matters really develop to a point where all the odds are against you, just come back, Jian Chen said with hesitance. Although he did not know what was happening with the Moon God Hall, it was quite easy to guess a few things from Fairy Hao Yu's words. In the past, Nan Potion approached peak chaotic prime, but he was quite a lot weaker than my father. If Nan Potion comes to the Cloud Plain, probably no one can match up to him as long as Grand Primes don't appear. In the past, it was because I discovered his schemes against the Moon God Hall that I suffered to his hand. In the end, my body was destroyed, and my soul accidentally fled to the lower world. Fairy Hao Yu growled as killing intent flickered in her eyes. Jian Chen sank into his thoughts from that. After a while, he said seriously, "Fairy Hao Yu, I'd advise you to go to the Moon God Hall later. Increase your strength as much as you can first. If the Moon God Hall really has fallen for Nan Potion's schemes, you won't be of any help even if you return given his strength." Fairy Hao Yu nodded gloomily. "Of course, I understand that, but I'm running out of patience. It has already been so many years. No matter what the situation is, I have to go back to the Moon God Hall to take a look. Otherwise, I won't be at peace." There was confidence in Fairy Hao Yu's words. Jian Chen also felt helpless when he saw how he could not persuade Fairy Hao Yu. After a moment of silence, he suddenly asked, "Where's the Moon God Hall?" Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Jian Chen slightly and said, "It's on the Ice Pole Plain, the place where one of the 7 grand exalts of the Saints' world, the ice goddess, stayed. It's also one of the 7 great sacred plains of the saints' world. Fairy Hao Yu paused before continuing. The cloud plain is extremely far away from the ice pole plain. Just the amount of 5-colored divine crystals needed to take the teleportation formation between planes is extravagant. It's enough to bring an ancient empire to its knees. Even Sister Tian Shuang can't afford this price. It's because I made a deal with the Xiandao Empire, where I would deal with one of their greatest enemies, that they're willing to provide me with enough divine crystals. In the morning of the next day, Fairy Hao Yu left with Tian Shuang and 2 other infinite prime ancestors of the Xiandao Empire silently. Soon after they had left, the formation that sealed up the entire northern region vanished. The Shi Emperor had finally removed his seal on this day. The moment the seal was removed, Jian Chen suddenly stood up in his luxurious hall. With a flash, he arrived outside, and he looked at the sky. He had already waited too long for this day. Fantastic! I can finally leave the northern region, Jian Chen said excitedly as he stared at the sky. Without hesitating at all, he immediately went to find the emperor, wanting to leave through the teleportation formation of the Xiandao Empire. He was already filled with worry. Now that the seal was removed, he did not even have the time to bid farewell to Fairy Hao Yu. He wanted to return to the southern region as soon as possible. I wonder if Princess Tian has given the box to the Empress or the Shi Emperor. However, I'm not certain whether Shi Yu is actually their daughter or not. It's just my guess. However, I clearly can't just wait here for the outcome of an unlikely guess. If she isn't their daughter, waiting here is just wasting time. It's throwing everyone from the Tian Yuan clan into danger. If she is, the Shi Emperor will definitely come to the southern region given his love for his daughter. As Jian Chen thought through this, he had already met up with the Emperor successfully. With Jian Chen's status in the Xiandao Empire, borrowing the teleportation formation was naturally nothing. Although he had turned down the Emperor's engagement, the Emperor's enthusiasm towards Jian Chen remained the same. He personally took Jian Chen to the teleportation formation in the Imperial Palace, allowing Jian Chen to use it for free despite the high cost of activating it. With Jian Chen's status in the Xiandao Empire, borrowing the teleportation formation was naturally nothing. Although he had turned down the Emperor's engagement, the Emperor's enthusiasm towards Jian Chen remained the same. He personally took Jian Chen to the teleportation formation in the Imperial Palace, allowing Jian Chen to use it for free despite the high cost of activating it. After stating the position, the teleportation formation immediately activated. With a powerful force, Jian Chen, who stood in the teleportation formation, directly vanished. In the prosperous imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire, the city of Sun and Moon, the streets were bustling as noises and shouts rang out. Smartly dressed officials or high-ranking members of organizations moved along the bustling streets with simply dressed cultivators. Endless stores filled the 2 sides of the streets and were crowded with people. As an ancient empire that was on the same level as the Xiandao Empire, the Heavenly Moon Empire naturally possessed an imperial capital that was no less impressive than the one in the Xiandao Empire. A few people with quite some status in the southern region gathered here. In the center of the city of Sun and Moon was a castle-like structure. People gathered in there in groups of 3s and 2s. Nearby, for extremely profound teleportation formations were carved into the ground. 2 of the teleportations were relatively smaller. They were roughly 10 meters in diameter. As for the other 2 teleportation formations, they were larger, a total of 30 meters wide. Not only were the pulses of energy that they gave off stronger, but the inscriptions were also more complicated and profound. All the people in the castle handed over different sums of divine crystals to an old man there before jumping onto the teleportation formation that was only 10 meters wide and leaving. The second teleportation formation of the same size would flicker with white light from time to time. Each time the white light dispersed, groups of people of varying sizes would appear. One was an entrance, while the other was an exit. Compared to the two 10-meter-wide formations, the two other formations were much more desolate. They would not be used even over several months. However, at this moment, one of the 30-meter-wide formations suddenly emitted a pulse of powerful energy. The energy was so powerful that it was several times greater than the two 10-meter-wide formations. The regional teleportation formation is responding. Someone is coming from another region. The regional teleportation formation is only used once every several years. It costs an astronomical amount of divine crystals every time. I wonder which great person has come from the other regions. For a time, the people in the surroundings all looked towards the teleportation formation as they discussed softly. Under everyone's attention, a young man who only seemed to be in his 20s appeared in the teleportation formation. He wore white robes, and he concealed his presence. As a result, he seemed like an ordinary person. However, his resolute, handsome face possessed some coldness such that his ordinary eyes made many people present feel a frightening pressure. This person must be an expert. Many people secretly commented around the teleportation formation. Their gazes were filled with envy and respect. To no surprise, the young man was Jian Chen. Jian Chen did not stick around for long. Once he left the teleportation formation, he made his way outside the castle. He purchased a map in the imperial capital and hurried off after gaining his bearings. He did not waste any time at all. When he had chosen a path of retreat for the Tian Yuan clan before, he had cast down a teleportation formation in the Heavenly Moon Empire. However, the teleportation formation was extremely distant from the imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire. As a result, he needed to hurry to where he had initially cast down the formation. Only then could he return to the divine kingdom of Pingtian in the shortest amount of time possible. As the ruler of the Dong'an province, the Tian Yuan clan was clearly rather lethargic. A stifling atmosphere loomed over Tian Yuan clan. This was because the patriarch who supported the clan had already vanished for many days. His situation was still unknown. Jian Chen was everything to the Tian Yuan clan. Even though the clan possessed other overgods, they were nowhere near close to replacing Jian Chen. As a result, Jian Chen's disappearance had affected the clan greatly. I hope that the patriarch can return safely. The Tian Yuan clan can't afford to lose patriarch Jian Chen. At this moment, Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the former patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, gathered together. Their faces were all filled with worry. Mo Xingfeng had now become a god after receiving a large number of resources from the Tian Yuan clan, becoming an elder of the Tian Yuan clan. Right at this moment, their faces froze. Their eyes widened as they stared ahead in surprise. The white-clothed Jian Chen slowly made his way out of the forbidden grounds. Patriarch? The three of them cried out in disbelief. At that moment, the three of them were completely puzzled. As everyone knew, the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan had been captured by the commander of the 7th Army, Yaxi Lian. There was no news regarding his situation apart from that. But now, the patriarch, who was rumored to be captured by Yaxi Lian, had just emerged from the forbidden grounds in perfect condition. The three of them found this rather difficult to understand. What's the situation at the front lines? Are Sacred Feather and the others fine? Jian Chen asked rather nervously with a stern face. He was afraid that something he did not wish to see had happened during the time he was away. Elder Sacred Feather and the others are well, and Elder Sacred Feather and Elder Houston have become overgods, Mo Ling said. He was overly excited, causing his face to become flushed. Jian Chen finally let out a breath of relief. He could not help but smile slightly before immediately charging off for the front lines. The battle continued near the boundary of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The tough walls had already completely collapsed, forcing the armies on the side of the Divine Kingdom to form lines of defense to stop the soldiers from the Empyrean demon cult. In this battle, the Divine Kingdom of Ping Tian had used all they had. Not only had all the people from the Divine Kingdom sent more people from their clans, but even most of the guards had been relocated away from the royal capital. The Royal Divine Army had been mobilized as well. Aside from the Divine Kingdom of Ping Tian, the nearby Divine Kingdoms had sent large numbers of soldiers as well. They used spatial treasures to move them over from various places. They could only fend off the soldiers from the three armies of the Empyrean demon cult by pouring together the strength of several Divine Kingdoms. The Divine King hovered in the sky as he looked around at the battlefield. He was not very optimistic inside while his brows had remained furrowed the entire time. On the other side, Vice Leader Huaiyan stood with his arms crossed, hovering there leisurely. He smiled faintly as if victory was already in his grasp. He stared at the sky. Through his unique cultivation method, he could clearly sense invisible energy of souls gather in the sky. All of it was sucked towards the sea of blood at the headquarters. Most of the mission from the Grand Elder has been completed, Huaiyan thought. He understood very well that the Empyrean demon cult did not attack to invade this time. Rather, they attacked to create endless slaughter so that they could gather the energy of souls. Suddenly, Huaiyan's eyes narrowed. He stared behind the Divine King. With his eyes as a primordial realm expert, he could clearly see a figure shoot over with lightning speed on a sword. It's Jian Chen. How is he still alive? Huaiyan frowned. At the same time, the Divine King sensed Jian Chen make his way over from behind. He was slightly surprised, and soon afterwards, he seemed to think of something. Understanding filled his face. Greetings, Your Majesty. Jian Chen arrived before the Divine King very soon. He clasped his hands and bowed at the Divine King. Good, very good. As long as you're fine. The Divine King nodded with a smile. Jian Chen's return had cleared up some of the gloom within him. Jian Chen, where's the commander of the 7th Army, Yaxi Lian? Huaiyan growled. He suddenly experienced an ill omen after seeing Jian Chen in perfect condition. Jian Chen smiled with deep meaning when he heard Huaiyan mention Yaxi Lian. He said, Your Majesty, I just happen to have a small gift for you. With that, Jian Chen immediately brought out Yaxi Lian, who had been imprisoned in the Bright Moon Divine Hall. Right now, Yaxi Lian's cultivation remained sealed, so she was unable to use her great strength at all. She was like a sitting duck in Jian Chen's hands. Yaxi Lian. Huaiyan's face changed drastically as he cried out. Disbelief had completely filled his face. This was because the outcome was completely different from what he had imagined. It could be described as the exact opposite. Huaiyan moved very soon, flying towards Yaxi Lian as quickly as he could. He wanted to save Yaxi Lian from Jian Chen. Primordial realm experts were so fast that Jian Chen could not even react. Huaiyan, if you take another step forward, I'll wipe out her soul, the Divine King's voice rang out. He had already appeared before Jian Chen silently with his hand pressed on Yaxi Lian's head. With his strength as a primordial realm expert, he only needed to press down gently, and Yaxi Lian's soul would be wiped out instantly. Even Huaiyan would not be able to save her in time. Huaiyan came to a halt when he heard the Divine King's words. His face had darkened as he glanced extremely sternly at Yaxi Lian, who had the Divine King's hand on her head. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty. In the end, Huaiyan did not dare to advance any further. However, he did not back off either. He glared at Jian Chen and said coldly, How impressive, Jian Chen. I never thought you really did have some ability for even Yaxi Lian to end up in your hands. There's a primordial realm expert behind this brat. If it weren't for her, how would he have been able to escape from me with just his own abilities? Yaxi Lian snorted coldly. Her face was calm and composed. Even though her life was in the hands of the Divine King, she did not become flustered at all. A primordial realm expert? Huaiyan snorted coldly as his gaze became extremely frigid. He growled, I really do have to look into this matter carefully and see just which primordial realm expert dares to stand against our Empyrean demon cult. It's nothing even if we lose if it's a battle between primordial realm experts, but our Empyrean demon cult will never drop a matter where a primordial realm expert lowers themselves to deal with a god king. We will pursue the matter to the end. A primordial realm expert? Huaiyan snorted coldly as his gaze became extremely frigid. He growled, I really do have to look into this matter carefully and see just which primordial realm expert dares to stand against our Empyrean demon cult. It's nothing even if we lose if it's a battle between primordial realm experts, but our Empyrean demon cult will never drop a matter where a primordial realm expert lowers themselves to deal with a god king. We will pursue the matter to the end. Huaiyan stared at the Divine King at this moment and said, Ping Tian, release Yaxi Lian. The Divine King smiled and said, Huaiyan, looking at how much you're worrying, Yaxi Lian must be quite important to you. As he said that, the Divine King could not help but press down harder on Yaxi Lian's head. The laws of the primordial realm vaguely condensed as he threatened Huaiyan, it's not impossible for me to release Yaxi Lian. Your Empyrean demon cult just has to retreat immediately. Retreat? That's completely impossible, Huaiyan said icily. His gaze was extremely cold, and there was heavy killing intent when he looked at Jian Chen in particular. If it were not for the primordial realm expert behind Jian Chen capturing Yaxi Lian, why would he, Huaiyan, be forced into negotiating? This was all because of Jian Chen. I can never let this Jian Chen go. Even if I ignore how great of a problem he'll become once he matures, just what he has done to Yaxi Lian cannot be forgiven. Killing intent filled Huaiyan inside. At this moment, he was even tempted to ignore the Divine King and directly try to kill Jian Chen. However, Yaxi Lian was in the Divine King's hands right now, so he did not dare to act recklessly. Since your Empyrean demon cult won't retreat, I can only lower myself to personally kill the commander of the 7th Army. With that, the strength of your cult will weaken, the Divine King said icily. It was filled with firm killing intent. He was also someone who could kill without hesitation. Since they could not come to terms, he had no need to keep Yaxi Lian alive. Stop! Right when the Divine King was about to kill Yaxi Lian, Huaiyan suddenly called out. The Divine King remained indifferent. Powerful laws had condensed around his hand on Yaxi Lian's head. Huaiyan, have you through it through? The Divine King asked as he glared at Huaiyan. Ping Tian, I'll be honest. You can't kill Yaxi Lian, because if you do, your divine kingdom of Ping Tian will definitely be annihilated. That's because Yaxi Lian is a direct disciple of one of the 8 elders, the Fox Saint Elder. At the same time, she's the Fox Saint Elder's only disciple. You should be able to guess just how important she is to the Fox Saint Elder, Huaiyan growled. The Fox Saint Elder? The Divine King frowned. His understanding of the Empyrean demon cult was limited to only the branch on the cloud plane. Clearly, the Fox Saint Elder of the 8 elders had already surpassed the limits of the cloud plane. I never thought she would actually be the direct disciple of the Fox Saint Elder. Ping Tian, we really can't kill this Yaxi Lian because no one is the Fox Saint Elder's opponent in the southern region apart from the Eternal Blood Sun Empire, including us ancient empires. At this moment, an ancient voice suddenly boomed out in the Divine King's head. The Divine King knew who the voice came from. He was a primordial realm ancestor of the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire. He remained with the imperial family. Thanks to his powerful soul, he was able to communicate with him from so far away. The Divine King thought quickly and said to Huaiyan, so what if she's the direct disciple of the Fox Saint Elder? There will be losses when the 2 armies clash. If the Fox Saint Elder really is bold enough to come, do you think the Blood Sun Empire will just stand by? Getting me to release her for nothing is impossible. Huaiyan became uneasy. After a very long pause, he said, Ping Tian, getting me to retreat is impossible. However, I can give you 7 days to regroup in exchange for Yaxi Lian. Huaiyan was out of choices with the current situation. Yaxi Lian's identity was just too special. If something were to happen to her, he would not be able to bear the consequences. 7 days are too short. Give me a month, the Divine King said coldly. 10 days. Huaiyan also responded coldly. In the end, they agreed to a ceasefire of half a month. Although half a month was very short, the time would allow the side of the Divine Kingdom to greatly regroup, allowing them to deploy even more troops. With the ceasefire, both the battle between the Over-Gods and the God King stopped at that moment. They all returned to their respective bases. It was just that there were far fewer of them compared to the beginning of the battle. A third of all the Over-Gods had passed away, while several God Kings had died as well. However, when they saw Jian Chen standing beside the Divine King in perfect condition, many of them became deeply surprised. Brother, this is fantastic. I knew you'd be fine. Sacred Feather arrived before Jian Chen as soon as possible. There was excitement and joy on his face that he struggled to hide. Right now, Sacred Feather was covered in blood. There were many vicious and horrifying wounds on him. Behind him, Houston, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu all let out a breath in relief when they discovered that Jian Chen had returned safely. They all smiled from the bottom of their hearts. They were also injured to varying degrees. He Yu was the most heavily injured out of all of them. Let's go back first. Without talking too much, Jian Chen vanished into the fortress with them. There was a military base within the fortress, and at the center of it stood several divine halls. Each divine hall represented a major organization. The Divine King had also placed a divine hall here for the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian as a place where his people could rest. Jian Chen directly took Sacred Feather and the others into the divine hall. They directly made their way to a secret room. After that, he took out the best healing pills out of everything he had purchased from the Xiandao Empire. These are all high-grade pills, so consume them and heal up, Jian Chen said to everyone. They did not hold back, directly devouring the pills to heal their wounds and replenish their origin energy. Brother, Sister Moore has been taken away, said Sacred Feather. He became rather depressed when he mentioned this. What? Moore has been taken away? Jian Chen was surprised. His eyes shone with a shocking light as a powerful presence emanated from his body. What happened? Who took Moore away? It's a sect called the Daoist Sect of Divine Sound. Everyone explained everything that had happened in a few sentences. The Skyfire Plane, the Daoist Sect of Divine Sound, Jian Chen murmured. Instead, he calmed down after learning about this matter. Then, he raised his head and stared at the ceiling of the secret room quietly. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate all, reaching into outer space. He seemed to see the distant Skyfire plane that he had never even heard about. Moore, I will come looking for you. That day won't be too far away, Jian Chen secretly made up his mind. Jian Chen took out a few high-quality saint artifacts and 3 supreme-quality saint artifacts afterwards for everyone to choose from. He had also purchased these saint artifacts from the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. There were saint artifacts for both offense and defense. The Empyrean Demon Orb can attack and defend. It's enough for me, said Houston. He only took some healing pills. These items don't suit me, said Sacred Feather. In the end, only Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu picked out some high-quality saint artifacts to replace the saint artifacts they originally had. As their strength increased, the saint artifacts that they originally possessed basically were not very useful anymore apart from the bead that could block attacks to the soul. Jian Chen, it's rumored that the commander of the 7th Army took you away, but Yaxi Lian ended up as your hostage in the end. What's that all about? Houston asked as he healed. It's Fairy Hao Yu who saved me. Fairy Hao Yu has already recovered her strength to the primordial realm now. Jian Chen narrated everything without going into too much detail. All the people gathered there because stunned when they heard that Fairy Hao Yu was already a primordial realm expert. They all felt some disbelief. Back on the Tian Yuan continent, Fairy Hao Yu had been reduced to a soul. She was so weak in their eyes, yet now, she had become a primordial realm expert in such a short amount of time. Everyone found the huge change to be a little unbelievable. The primordial realm was a cultivation level that they could only look up to in their eyes. It was insurmountable. I brought quite a few things back from my visit to the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. They're enough to increase the strength of our entire clan to another level. Once you've mostly recovered, come to the Tian Yuan clan with me. I want to reorganize the Tian Yuan clan during the half a month of ceasefire so that we can truly toil about without worry on the front lines, said Jian Chen. He thought back to how some unknown people had slaughtered members of the Tian Yuan clan back when they were gathering materials for the teleportation formations. Before they found out who was behind it all, before they completely eliminated this potential problem, danger would always engulf the Tian Yuan clan. As a result, Jian Chen was always worried as the patriarch. He was afraid that something would happen in the clan when he was not present. The divine kingdom of Pingtian was not peaceful at all during the ceasefire. The divine king had personally decreed to mobilize all the soldiers in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, moving them all to the front line. At the same time, he began recruiting many soldiers in the divine kingdom as well. Moreover, the Divine King communicated with the primordial realm experts of the Heavenly Moon Empire through his soul, asking for even more reinforcements because the Divine Kingdom was unable to stop the armies of the Empyrean demon cult by themselves. At the same time, the Divine Kings from the neighboring Divine Kingdoms answered the Divine King's call for reinforcements. They sent even more soldiers to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. The walls at the front lines were being rebuilt as well. Several god kings worked together, reconstructing the long wall such that it reached the toughness of defensive saint artifacts. The Empyrean demon cult also replenished their soldiers in an orderly manner. Although people had died during the war in the army of 300,000, the Empyrean demon cult had far more soldiers than just the 9 armies. Behind the 9 armies was a reserve army. Once the 9 armies lost soldiers, the reserves would immediately replace them. However, for some reason, the 9 armies of the Empyrean demon cult always remained as 100,000 people. It would never surpass that. A few days later, Rui Jin and the others mostly recovered from their wounds. Jian Chen immediately returned to the Dong'an province with them. The ancestors of the powerful clans in the Dong'an province came along as well, returning to the Dong'an province with Jian Chen. However, aside from Jian Chen's group, only 2 ancestors remained from the powerful clans. Jian Chen looked at the 2 last ancestors on the flying vehicle and sighed to himself secretly. He controlled the path of the flying vehicle quietly, directing it towards the Dong'an province. It was rumored that the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, who was supposed to be captured by the commander of the 7th army of the Empyrean demon cult, Yaxi Lian, had suddenly returned. News of this spread across the entire province as soon as possible. As soon as the flying vehicle approached the provincial city, the city gates were already filled with people. Many people gathered there to welcome them back warmly. The patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan is a supreme overgod who can make onto the overgod's plaque. Even with the entire saints world in perspective, these supreme overgods are famed. I never thought I'd be able to stand so close to a supreme overgod. He's a figure of legends. It's said that supreme overgods can kill god kings. This commander of the 7th army sure is unlucky to come across a supreme overgod. Right? I heard that the commander of the 7th Army was captured by the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. Don't underestimate him just because he's still an over-god. Even capturing a god king is nothing difficult for him. There were many praises for Jian Chen among the warm welcome. Many people could not help but feel a deep sense of pride when the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan was mentioned. The flying vehicle directly entered the Tian Yuan clan. All the elders in the clan had already been waiting for quite some time. When they saw Jian Chen and the others return safely, their faces all became filled with evident excitement and delight. Jian Chen leapt off the flying vehicle. Just when he wanted to say something, a light suddenly flickered through his eyes, and he stared at the residence that belonged to him sharply. There's someone inside. Jian Chen's heart shivered. He could clearly sense that something was moving around in his room, but he was unable to tell who it was through the senses of his soul. This person's strength completely exceeds mine. I can't sense them at all. Jian Chen's heart sank slightly. He felt slightly worried as he directly made his way to his residence. Sacred Feather, Houston, and so on could sense the change with Jian Chen. They looked at each other and followed behind him. Jian Chen directly pushed through the door and entered his residence. He knew that before an expert that even the senses of his soul were unable to detect, all his movements were under their control. Anything he did would not be able to escape their senses. As a result, he just did not make any preparations. He just waltzed in without trying to hide it at all. I wonder which expert has suddenly paid a visit to my Tian Yuan clan. From Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the others' lack of response, they clearly don't know about the arrival of this uninvited guest, Jian Chen thought. He was troubled. However, after he walked in, he saw a white-clothed woman sitting at a table idly, eating the fruit there. He could not help but become surprised. "Fairy, how you?" Jian Chen cried out subconsciously. Surprise had filled his face. Fairy Hao Yu sat there as she wished, biting into the fruit that was originally supposed to be for Jian Chen. She looked at Jian Chen as if she was smiling and said, "You're so careful even in your own clan. It looks like the famous patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan doesn't have a particularly liberating life." Jian Chen let out a sigh of relief. He ignored Fairy Hao Yu's snide comments and said, "Fairy Hao Yu, you've suddenly appeared in the southern region. It looks like you've completed the matters for the Xiandao Empire." Fairy Hao Yu stood up. With a wave of her hand, the door to the building immediately closed, locking Sacred Feather and the others who had followed Jian Chen along outside. She described it like it was nothing. "This matter is something difficult for the Xiandao Empire to resolve, but it's a piece of cake for me. I've come to take a look at your situation here and also to bid farewell to you." Fairy Hao Yu continued, "Before I go, is there anything you can't deal with? Just tell me, such as that Earth Spirit sect or something." Fairy Hao Yu had spoken seriously. The Earth Spirit sect stood on the same side as Jian Chen, yet they had launched a sneak attack against Jian Chen without paying attention to the bigger picture. As such, she felt that everything should not just end there. She wanted to properly punish the Earth Spirit sect. Fairy Hao Yu had spoken seriously. The Earth Spirit sect stood on the same side as Jian Chen, yet they had launched a sneak attack against Jian Chen without paying attention to the bigger picture. As such, she felt that everything should not just end there. She wanted to properly punish the Earth Spirit sect. However, Jian Chen shook his head instead, turning down Fairy Hao Yu's kind intentions. Although he knew that it would be far easier to obtain an explanation when he visited the Earth Spirit sect if Fairy Hao Yu took part, he felt like he had already owed her enough. He had helped her a lot in the past as well, but what Fairy Hao Yu had done in the past few years were more than enough to make up for it. Moreover, he did not want other people to deal with his problems whenever he encountered them. It would make him become reliant on others if it kept happening. That would not benefit him at all. "You and your stubborn head really won't budge, huh?" I want to help you out, but you turn me down. Think about just how great of a price the Xiandao Empire has paid for me to do something for them. Do you think the Earth Spirit sect will take you seriously as a mere overgod? If it weren't for the fact that a primordial realm expert has appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, making them want to avoid any trouble with him, how much longer do you think you can live? With your talent and the fact that you've fallen out with the Earth Spirit sect, they'll never let you mature successfully. Do you plan on relying on the Divine King to help you? Before I came here, I did some investigation. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect has already stepped into the primordial realm for several 100,000 years. He's not someone that the Divine King who has only recently broken through to the primordial realm can stop. Fairy Hao Yu stared at Jian Chen as she said all that in a single breath. She seemed rather exasperated and frustrated. Thank you for your concern, Fairy Hao Yu. I appreciate it. Jian Chen clasped his fist at Fairy Hao Yu. Why, you're driving me crazy. Whatever. Since you want to deal with it yourself, then deal with it yourself. Your life has nothing to do with me, Fairy Hao Yu said in annoyance. Her chest heaved slightly, and she was clearly quite frustrated. Then, Fairy Hao Yu, please rest here for a while. I've just returned to the clan, so I still have some matters I have to deal with. I must bid farewell to you for now. Jian Chen smiled brightly and left the room, leaving Fairy Hao Yu fuming in there. Afterwards, Jian Chen gathered all the elders of the Tian Yuan clan. He split up the things he had purchased from the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire and set up an arsenal there. He left behind various pills, cultivation methods, battle skills, and saint artifacts. Once the people in the clan reached a certain cultivation level and made a certain amount of contribution to the clan, they could enter the arsenal to pick something. The minimum requirement for the 3 supreme quality saint artifacts was over God, so no one could use it. As a result, Jian Chen did not leave a single one of them in there. To Jian Chen's pity, none of the 3 supreme quality saint artifacts were suitable for him. He had basically searched through all the stores in the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire, but he failed to find a supreme quality saint artifact that suited him. As a result, he still used the startling rainbow sword. After organizing all that, Jian Chen took out 2 sets of formation banners from his space ring. He began setting them up around the Tian Yuan clan. One set could attack, while the other could defend. Jian Chen had paid an extraordinary amount of divine crystals to purchase the 2 God King level formations in the imperial capital. With the protection of these 2 barriers, he would be truly without worries for the clan as long as God Kings did not come. It would be able to stop all opponents below God King without any trouble at all. A day later, God King level formations enveloped the entire clan, giving off powerful pulses of energy. Jian Chen stood in the clan as he stared at the 2 sets of formations that were already in operation. Finally, he revealed a somewhat victorious smile. He really could stop worrying about the Tian Yuan clan now. I really don't have to worry either with these 2 formations, Shen Jian uttered quietly as he appeared before Jian Chen. He also stared at the formations. Afterwards, he looked at Jian Chen and said sternly, Jian Chen, there's not much time left for me here. I will be leaving soon. You're leaving? Jian Chen stared at Shen Jian and asked in surprise. Shen Jian nodded. When I broke through to Over God, I could vaguely sense a calling from the depths of outer space. Afterwards, as my strength increased, this calling became more and more powerful. It was just that you needed my help at that time, so I stayed behind. Now that these 2 God King level formations are protecting the Tian Yuan clan, there's no more point in me staying. It's time for me to go. Jian Chen fell silently. Ever since he had come to the saints' world, he had been with Shen Jian. They had been together from the puny deities they were in the very beginning to the current overgods that ruled over an entire region. Now that Shen Jian had to leave all of a sudden, Jian Chen felt rather unwilling to part with him. What they had gone through in those years had already forged a deep friendship between the 2 of them. They were like close brothers. Once they separated, it would definitely be a long time before they met again. They had no idea when that would happen. As a matter of fact, they did not even know whether they would be able to meet each other again or not in the saints' world that was filled with danger. When do you plan on leaving? Jian Chen asked with a rather heavy heart. I plan on leaving after this war. Shen Jian stared deeply at the sky and said indifferently. In the blink of an eye, over half of the period of ceasefire had passed. The next morning, Fairy Haoyu called Jian Chen over. She directly cut to the chase after seeing Jian Chen. I plan on visiting the branch of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain. Are you coming along? Jian Chen was surprised when he heard that. He said, that's the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain. That's basically the belly of the beast. It'll be extremely dangerous. What are you going there for? It's just a branch. Even if it's the belly of the beast, that only applies to regular infinite primes. Fairy Haoyu continued, the Empyrean demon cult has divided itself into 3 and is attacking 3 different regions at the same time. Their actions can't be as simple as just taking over territory. I think there must be some other secret hidden behind these wars. As a result, I plan on investigating it to see what they're doing. You'll offend the Empyrean demon cult by doing that, Jian Chen said with some worry. Even Tian Shuang hoped that Haoyu would not become involved with the matters of the Empyrean demon cult. Naturally, he wished that Fairy Haoyu would not offend the Empyrean demon cult either. The Empyrean demon cult was an extremely powerful organization. It was enough to make all the organizations that stood at the peak of the Cloud Plain feel fear. Any accidents would even lead to trouble for the Moon God Hall. Fairy Haoyu rolled her eyes. Since when did you become so fearful? The Empyrean demon cult is indeed powerful, but I'm not afraid of them. Moreover, I'm just going in to have a look so that I can understand what they're doing. It's not like I'm destroying their entire branch. And right now, their 3 vice leaders just happen to be out. It's a perfect time to infiltrate their headquarters now that it's empty. Jian Chen hesitated for a while before making up his mind. All right, I'll come with you to have a look then. I want to see just what hidden secret there is for their wars against everyone. Infiltrating the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain was definitely a bold and risky move. This was because no one from the 6 ancient empires of the southern region possessed that ability. However, the Blood Sun Empire feared the Empyrean demon cult, so even if they had supreme experts, they would not do something like that. Only Fairy Haoyu possessed both the strength and courage to target the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult directly. The headquarters must be covered with formations. I can get through them, but it'll be quite difficult to do so all by myself while not creating any disturbances. As a result, I need you to find 3 other people to come along aside from you. I'll teach the 4 of you the Moonlight Illumination formation so that you can assist me, added Fairy Haoyu. Jian Chen became rather hesitant after he heard Fairy Haoyu's words towards the end. He said while lacking in confidence, but the people I can find right now are only overgods at best. The formations at the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult must be extremely powerful. Can it work with our strength? Jian Chen became rather hesitant after he heard Fairy Haoyu's words towards the end. He said while lacking in confidence, but the people I can find right now are only overgods at best. The formations at the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult must be extremely powerful. Can it work with our strength? I don't need you to break through the formations. I only need the 4 of you to create the Moonlight Illumination formation to cover the disturbance I make, said Fairy Haoyu. Jian Chen pondered over the matter seriously and said, all right, I'll go contact them right now. Jian Chen left soon afterwards. He called in Shenjian, Sacred Feather, and Houston, sternly telling them the situation in detail. What? Fairy Haoyu wants to infiltrate the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. Shenjian, Sacred Feather, and Houston were all shocked. They became extremely stern. That's right. Fairy Hao Yu should possess the ability to do so. However, she needs our help to not alert anyone when she breaks through the formations. Are you coming? Jian Chen asked seriously. Shen Jian, Houston, and Sacred Feather said nothing. What Fairy Hao Yu wanted to do stunned them. In their eyes, she was simply too bold. Shen Jian said after a while of thought, with the current situation, it's impossible for our war against the Empyrean demon cult to end quickly. If the war continues, it'll be extremely bad for everyone. Even we ourselves may die if it is prolonged. If we can enter the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult and tamper with some things through Fairy Hao Yu, we might be able to end the war sooner. Jian Chen, when do we move? Houston asked. Clearly, he had made up his mind. In the end, Sacred Feather expressed his thoughts as well. He had basically grown up with Jian Chen, going wherever Jian Chen went. Even if he knew that certain death awaited him, he would not hesitate at all. Before we go to the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, we need to learn the Moonlight Illumination formation, said Jian Chen. Afterwards, Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and so on told everyone that they would be in seclusion to heal and that no one was to disturb them. They also activated the God King level formations to envelope the entire clan before leaving the Dong'an province with Fairy Hao Yu silently. In an ancient mountain range extremely distant from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, there was an extremely well-hidden gorge. It was several thousand meters deep, and a thick layer of vegetation covered its entrance. It was very difficult to discover its existence from the outside. The gorge was triangular in shape, where it was narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. The entrance was only around a dozen meters across, while the bottom of the gorge was several thousand meters wide. At this moment, gentle moonlight illuminated the depths of the gorge that were supposed to be pure black. Powerful pulses of energy emanated outwards, forming a tremendous pressure that crushed all the plants at the bottom of the gorge to pieces. It had been 3 days already. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, Houston, and Sacred Feather currently stood in a special position, creating a formation. A white light completely composed from moonlight force covered a range of several thousand meters from them. The 4 of them bathed in the gentle moonlight as it glistened. However, at a closer glance, it was quite obvious that this moonlight force did not originate from their own powers. Instead, it all originated from a crystal in their hands. The 4 of them controlled the moonlight force in the crystal to create the Moonlight Illumination formation together. Fairy Hao Yu hovered in the air. She stared at the formation from the 4 of them nearby and said, "There are basically no problems left with the Moonlight Illumination formation. The formation cannot defend or attack at all, but it can reduce all the disturbances from anything that happens within it to nothing. As long as it doesn't exceed the limits of the formation, even the 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult won't be able to sense what happens in the formation. With the assistance of this Moonlight Illumination formation, I have complete confidence that we can infiltrate the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult without alerting anyone. Let's go then. It's time for us to set off." Afterwards, the 5 of them left the hidden gorge and directly headed towards the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain. There was a region of extremely desolate plains in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. The sky was filled with endless darkness, where sunlight never reached, while the ground of the entire region was crimson. It was all dark red as if it had been watered with blood. The place seemed to be in eternal darkness. In the depths of the desolate and deathly silent lands stood a majestic castle. The castle was extremely large and completely dark red as if it had been covered by blood. Even without getting too close to it, a heavy, metallic smell of blood would seem to be present. The smell of death filled the surroundings. Coupled with the chilling winds that shrieked like ghosts, the castle in the darkness seemed even gloomier. It would make people shiver. Originally, there was no wind in the surroundings of the castle. It would be terrifyingly silent. However, with the war that had occurred recently, wind appeared in its surroundings. If someone possessed extremely sharp senses, they would even be able to sense the chilling winds constantly revolve around the top of the castle. It formed an invisible swirl there. It was as if something there was sucking in the shrieking winds. This castle was the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult branch on the Cloud Plain. The headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult was a forbidden region for the experts of the Cloud Plain. Even infinite primes would not approach it so easily. However, a faint figure flickered through this world of darkness at this moment. She seemed to have fused with the surrounding space, where even god kings would not be able to detect her existence. With a single flash, she had already approached the castle silently. As the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, its security was especially tight. Layers of formation hidden in space engulfed both the interior and the exterior of the castle. There were even formations at the level of primordial realm experts among them. However, the formations only acted like furnishing to the person fused with space. They were unable to do anything at all. In the end, the figure approached the castle easily. A large group of soldiers were currently gathered under the lead of a god king outside the castle. At this moment, the gates of the castle suddenly swung open. A white-robed man strode out with his arms crossed. His pale face possessed some femininity, making him pretty like a woman. His appearance was enough to make people steal a few extra glances helplessly. "Greetings, Protector Tseng." The god king in front of the army saw the white-clothed man and immediately bowed. The man nodded and said coldly, "Vice Leader Huai has orders for you to set off immediately. Remember, you must complete the Vice Leader's mission cleanly. Leave the Divine Kings to the Protectors from the Hall of Protectors." "Yes, sir." Protector Tseng did not discover that just when he opened the gates of the castle and walked out, a faint flash had drifted past him just a few meters away, vanishing into the castle. In an extremely quiet, hidden place within the gloomy castle, the white-clothed fairy Hao slowly revealed herself from the surrounding space. She stared ahead and could not help but frown. She murmured, "The formations in the castle are indeed much more powerful than the ones outside. They're on two completely different levels. In here should be the place where the Empyrean demon cult is truly trying to protect. The formations outside were probably only set down by the vice leaders casually. I need to rely on their moonlight illumination formation to pass through these formations without alerting anyone." As she said that, the bright moon divine hall that had shrunken to the size of a palm sat in her hand silently. With a thought, several streaks of white light immediately came out from the divine hall, turning into 4 figures. They were Jian Chen, Shen Jian, Houston, and Sacred Feather. "We're already inside the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. Follow me closely and don't make any sounds, so we don't get exposed," Fairy Hao warned the people behind her. All 4 of them nodded sternly. They understood that they had truly entered the belly of the beast now. Danger was all around them. I already sensed it outside that the true secret should be hidden on the top floor. Right now, formations protect the entrance to the next floor. Use the moonlight illumination formation. I'll get through these formations, Fairy Hao said to the 4 people behind her secretly. Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shen Jian looked at one another and immediately got into action. Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shen Jian looked at one another and immediately got into action. From the previous practice, they had already developed a tacit understanding, so when they cast the moonlight illumination formation, they were able to do it without much effort at all. They were extremely well versed at it. Very soon, the 4 of them cast down the moonlight illumination formation perfectly. Pure, glistening moonlight force surrounded their bodies. A barrier completely condensed from moonlight force appeared around them, covering a range of several hundred meters. Even though the formation was completed, there was not the slightest pulse of energy apart from the light that shone as brightly as the moon. As a result, the moonlight illumination formation could only be discovered through sight. It was impossible to find it at all through the other senses, including the senses of the soul. The moonlight illumination formation could not attack or defend. Its only usage was to cover up everything within the formation. Of course, the premise was that it did not surpass the formation's limits. Fairy Haoyu no longer hesitated either when she saw that the moonlight illumination formation was complete. She immediately began to smash through the formations. She was slightly stern. Primordial realm laws descended on her, and all her movements possessed devastating power. However, since it was purposefully suppressed, this primordial realm power did not erupt. She concealed it perfectly. Fairy Haoyu got through the formation extremely quickly. In under a minute, there was a hiss, and a hole gradually appeared in the formation that blocked the path to the next floor. It revealed a dark passage. Chilling winds whistled through the passage, and it was filled with a demonic aura. A demonic aura that was especially pure and dense flowed out from the passage. To avoid attracting attention, I've only created a temporary entrance through this formation. It will close up by itself very soon, so come on in, Fairy Haoyu said to Jian Chen and the others. With a wave of her hand, moonlight force appeared, and all the demonic aura in the passage was instantaneously dispersed. With a flash, she entered the passageway that led to the next floor. The four of them immediately removed the formation and disappeared into the passage with a flash. Soon after the four of them had entered, the hole in the formation completely closed up, returning to its previous state. The headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult only seemed like a huge castle from the outside. Inside, it was so large that it seemed to be composed of miniature worlds. The space on each floor had completely surpassed the castle's size. In particular, the halls, secret rooms, and so on all seemed to possess worlds of their own. The castle was filled with formations. Every single one of them was extremely powerful, either set up openly or hidden in space. Just the pulses of energy they gave off were enough to make the four of them to shiver. With their strength, they did not even dare to expand the senses of their souls because they were afraid that they would not be able to sense a god king hidden somewhere and hence expose themselves. As a result, the four of them could only follow behind Fairy Haoyu. Along the way, the four of them avoided all the dangerous regions and the patrol of god kings under Fairy Haoyu's lead. They advanced through the headquarters silently, without raising any attention at all. It had to be mentioned that the security of the headquarters was extremely tight. Ordinary infinite primes would face life-threatening danger if they infiltrated here. However, Fairy Haoyu was no ordinary infinite prime. There was no fear or danger under her lead. As they traveled deeper in, they gradually approached the core region of the headquarters while Fairy Haoyu's face had gradually become stern as well. This should be the entrance to the next floor, but there's an extremely powerful formation hidden here. Fairy Haoyu stopped at the end of a hallway. She stared ahead as a sliver of seriousness appeared on her face. There is a trapping and killing formation, coupled with an illusionary formation in there. The formation is so powerful that even 7th heavenly layer infinite primes will probably be done for if they get caught in there. It looks like the area above should be the most important part of the headquarters. Maybe the real reason why the Empyrean demon cult is waging so many wars is in there, Fairy Haoyu said sternly. After studying the formation for a while, she said confidently, however, this formation still can't stop us. It's just that getting through the formation might create a disturbance so great that the moonlight illumination formation can't cover it. Fall into formation. A while later, Fairy Haoyu made up her mind. Please wait, Fairy Haoyu. Houston said all of a sudden. He seemed uneasy. Fairy Haoyu turned around to look at Houston. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather all looked at him as well. What's wrong, Uncle Xiao? Jian Chen asked in confusion. Houston stared at the formation up ahead. After a moment of silence, he said, maybe this isn't the right path. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather immediately became surprised. They looked at Houston doubtfully. Even Fairy Hao Yu stared at Houston in surprise. She asked, "How do you know that it's not the right path?" "Because of this." With a thought, a thumb-sized orb gradually floated out from his forehead. The orb was completely blood-red as if it had been condensed from blood. It was demonic and seemed slightly sinister. It was the Empyrean demon orb Jian Chen had originally given to Houston. Fairy Hao Yu studied the Empyrean demon orb for a while and said, "This is a demonic god artifact of quite a high quality. It looks like you've gained the artifact spirit's recognition since you are able to use this god artifact with your current strength." Houston nodded. He had learnt about the artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb long ago. He said, "The artifact spirit just told me to take another path." After a moment of thought, Fairy Hao Yu said, "Then lead the way." The 5 of them changed their path. Houston was responsible for leading them afterwards, allowing them to directly travel towards where the Empyrean demon orb told him to go. Before long, the 5 of them stopped. It was not because they did not want it to stop, but that they had reached a dead end. They had run out of places to go. "There's no formation here. It's a dead end." Fairy Hao Yu furrowed her brows after studying the surroundings. However, at this moment, the Empyrean demon orb began to shine with a dazzling red light that surrounded all of them. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.